Out here. But I'm gonna end up back here anyways.
Hi, Dr. Hauser.
Hello, you can hear me fine?
Yep, we can hear you fine. It'll be a little bit before it's your turn, but
Yeah, I
that's
just
all
thought I
right.
would
Sit
early
back and
on.
watch the show.
Perfect. I think for my thing, because I only had the 5 minutes, I think
Yep.
I'm going to leave the actual PowerPoint in the package, and I'm just
Okay.
going to speak to what I have rather than try to go next slide, please, because that just gets annoying.
Yeah, I mean you can share your own slides if you want, or you could just speak to it. It's up to you.
Oh, I didn't realize I could share my own slides.
Yeah, I'll give you the power to do that.
Okay.
And then when it's your turn, you can share your slides if you want to, and if not, that's okay too.
No, actually, that actually works out really, really well then. I thought I was doing this without, so thank you for
Nope.
letting me know.
Yep, you bet.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no
Bye.
problem.
All right, here we go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Kincardine to order at 5 o'clock on December 13, 2023. Councillor Blackwell, please.
As representatives of the municipality, we have been entrusted to act as stewards for the community in which we live and work. We recognize the importance of learning the full history of this land, our place within its long story, and our responsibilities as treaty people. I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting on traditional lands and treaty territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewas of Nawash Unceded First Nation and the Chippewas of Saugeen First Nation. We deeply appreciate the contributions that Indigenous people have made and continue to make, both in caring for this land and strengthening our communities and respective nations. As a public service organization, we are committed to actions that move us towards a journey of truth, healing, and reconciliation with the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, the Métis Nation of Ontario, and the historic Saugeen Métis.
Thank you, Councillor. We continue with roll call. We begin with Deputy Mayor Clark,
Present.
Councillor Blackwell,
Present.
Councillor Kavanaugh,
Present.
Councillor Hinchberger,
Present.
Councillor Kennedy,
Present.
Councillor Pranger,
Present.
Councillor Steinoff Gray,
Present.
Councillor Stewart.
Present.
I'd also like to acknowledge the many staff members we have in our chamber, as well as a group of citizens who've discovered the excitement of civics, and they just come to watch council in action. Or not, maybe. Anyway, thank you for being here this evening. Are there any amendments, additions, or deletions to or from the open agenda that you had before us this evening? Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, there's been a request from the clerk's department that council approve the following amendment to the agenda, which is appointment bylaw, enforcement officers, municipal support services, 2023 bylaw be added as 8.4D.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Kennedy, all in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Once again, I remind you to disclose any pecuniary interest and the nature thereof, either now or as it arises in the meeting. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you very much. Through you, I need to declare a pecuniary interest for item number 7.1F, the Bruce Power Water Agreement, as my husband is an employee of Bruce Power.
Councillor Pranger,
I need to declare a pecuniary interest for item number 7.1 Foxtrot, the Bruce Power Water Agreement.
general nature.
Bruce Power is my primary employment.
Okay. Councillor Steinoff Gray, please.
I need to declare a pecuniary interest for 7.1 Foxtrot, as that's my employer. Thanks.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, I have a pecuniary interest as well. It's indirect for 7.1 Juliet, the Kincardine Skating Club agreement, as I have 2 children that are involved in their program.
Deputy Mayor Clark.
7.1J, same reason, it's an indirect pecuniary interest. My boys are involved with the Kincardine Skating Club.
We need a mover and seconder that the minutes of the council meeting held on November 22, 2023 be adopted as printed, moved by councillors Kavanaugh and Stewart. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Clerk, was there any unfinished business? Okay, seeing none. All right, the municipality of Kincardine has a policy in place that any person affiliated with the municipality of Kincardine who wins a significant national or provincial competition shall be recognized by council in the form of a plaque outlining their achievement. And tonight we are very pleased to be honoring not one, but 2 Kincardine baseball teams who have done exemplary work acting as ambassadors of the municipality of Kincardine. Not only were they ambassadors, but they also won provincial championships in 2023. And they are the U13 OBA Kincardine Cardinals and the Kincardine Cubs.
You ready for them now?
You betcha.
Okay.
Win the OBA U13D Division Provincial Championships. They also had many other significant victories during the season that included over teams in divisions higher rated than themselves. And it's come to our attention, and we really appreciate knowing that in spite of their impressive win-loss record, the Cardinals should be proudest of their commitment to sportsmanship and their local baseball community. The Cardinals always gave 3 cheers for the opposition, win or lose. They are truly a great team that had an incredibly memorable season. So our congratulations go out to the team members and the parents and the support staff that works with them. But so before we do anything else, like the notice said, 3 cheers, win or lose. So it would seem appropriate that we ever had a demonstration of what the 3 cheers sounded like. So if the whole team, before you come on for your plaques, if you want to stand up, I'm sure somewhere there's a leader in that group that says, all right, 1 and a 2 and away you go. Ready? Awesome. Well done. Thank you. All right, so I'd like to invite Karen Kiefer to come over and help me with this, or not. You
Sure.
you say the.
Absolutely. A thrill. Okay, when I call your name, just come up and the mayor will hand you your plaque. Lane Bauman. Tyler Bauman.
So I'm gonna make a suggestion. I've been in the crowd where you clap for everybody, and even though it's really cool, if you just hold it until it's all done, and then we'll all clap for everybody. Because that, the poor guy at the last, he only gets 2 claps. So, congratulations, well done.
Colton Bernard. Lenny Connell.
Awesome, good for you.
Cade Dudgeon. Brett Helene. Maddie McKegg.
Shortstop? Catcher? Oh, congratulations, where you go.
Darren Morse.
Somebody's got-
He wants. Ricky Cormier Plant. I don't think he's here. Okay. Reese Thompson.
Who is the picture? Oh, you all are, okay, congratulations.
Lucas Tout.
Congratulations.
And Ben Warwick. It should be noted here, it says Ben was the WOBA Player of the Year.
Yeah, but we're all done now.
Shake the mayor's hand. And
And a serious thank you to the moms and dads and grandparents that came to watch. Like, these are the athletes, but I'm a parent. I know what it takes. Well done. Well done.
so we're also able to honor the coaching staff this evening if they could come up when called. Ryan Dudgeon. He's not here. Okay. Andrew Warwick.
Andrew, congratulations. Are you the pitcher? No, you're sorry.
Steve Connell. Steve Traval. Ryan Plant. He's not here. Okay. And Braden Novak. I was just informed Braden was also coach of the year. So I'll give it back to you for the Cubs.
Thank you. We'd also like to acknowledge the Kincardine Cubs Senior AA Men's Provincial Championship team. They competed in Vaughan early in September and played against teams from Fort Erie, New Lowell. Where is New Lowell? Between Collingwood and Barrie, okay. Tecumseh and Whitby. A combination of strong pitching and timely hits led the Cubs to the third straight Senior AA OBA provincial title and sixth provincial trophy in 11 years, marking them as one of the most successful senior teams in the province over that time. Cubs had another great season and they look forward to repeating. And I'm thinking the farm team that's coming up here is going to chase some of you old timers out of that team. So keep at it. You're doing great work. Anyway, Karen, please.
So I'm just going to read the players that are here first, and then I'll quickly go through those who aren't. You might have to do a bit of scrambling there. Matt Pollock. They're in alphabetical order, that's the problem. I know.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Hey, Matt, you know, stand over there and get that. Robert McGregor. Greg Stepaniak. Tyler Marchenko. Scott Austin. And Paul Boyadjian. Just quickly, I'm going to mention the other Cubs who couldn't join us this evening for various reasons. Peyton Howell, Chris Inkster, Jarrett Blue, Zane Livingston, Curtis Vandenberg, Griff Potter, Jordan Beisel, John Campbell, Patrick McIsaac, Dawson Fenstra, Wilson Ship, Matt Melisas, Connor Yorth, Jack Middleton, and Brandon Dunlop.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very good.
So that's it.
So once again, thank you very much for coming to receive those awards tonight. I'm fearful that our council meeting will be much less well attended in about 2 minutes. You're welcome to stay, but you're also welcome, go back and get your folks to buy you pizza on the way home. Right on, okay? Good for you. Was that helpful at all? Yeah. Thanks, Nicole. So we also have opportunity to acknowledge and recognize a retiring employee tonight. And I'd like to invite Randy Nicholson to come up to receive this certificate of achievement. 33 years, my gracious me, you've been driving a lot of miles of road. Randy, we have so appreciated the work that you've done for our municipality. Stuck at Laurie there. So Randy has been recognized by his department and by the municipality HR and stuff. So this is just the achievement certificate from council. Thank you very much. Randy. Would also like to acknowledge Debbie Caravaggio, who worked at our waste management site for a number of years. Debbie was a great addition to our municipal work team as well. I'd also like to take a moment just to recognize some of the other municipal staff members that have achieved milestone years. Within the municipal staff itself, we have 5-year certificates going to Rick Bites, Dallas Hewitt, Jerry Jez, Jenna Leafso, Sarah McKenzie, and Alex Neitzel. 10-year certificates go to Shelby Clancy, Kevin Kirk, Paul Lajeunesse, and Keith Virtue. And 15-year certificates go to Bob Arnold, Murray Needham, and John Tibbin. And we have half a dozen firefighters who have achieved 5-year certificates: Hayden Allen, Mike Ballantyne, Drew Dudgeon, Cody Hayes, Ryan Lawrence, and Dylan Palmetier. Certainly any municipal government appreciates the workers that they have serving the community. Without them, like, the work we do becomes pretty much moot. So anyway, so thank you so much to our employees. All right, we begin our public meeting now for a planning application for Brandon Finney, 26 Parkwood Road. Is Julie online for this one? Jake? Okay. I'd like to welcome Julie Steeper from our county planning department to present the application. Once again, Julie, thank you so much for being here. Council has had opportunity to review this application. So as you're able, we have a really long agenda tonight. We'll look for a brief, broad overview, and we'll direct any questions that we have for you for consideration.
Thank you. Sounds good. I'll keep my presentation brief. If anyone is interested in receiving notice on any of the applications presented this evening, please contact the clerk or email the Bruce County Planning Department. The purpose of the application is to sever 4 residential lots indicated as parts 1 through 4 on the site plan from a larger retained parcel, part 5, with frontages along Parkwood Road. A zoning bylaw amendment is required to rezone the lands to address the reduced lot frontages for all parts, and the lot size for part 2. If approved, the application would facilitate the creation of 4 residential lots. A holding provision requiring an archaeological assessment for the retained lands containing high archaeological potential is proposed. The property is located at 26 Parkwood Road, which is west of Bruce Road 23 and north of Concession 7 and south of Lorne Beach Road. The site is surrounded by residential and agricultural lands. Comments of concern were raised from the chief building official regarding the buildable area of Part 4, which has been addressed by the review and refinement of the EP zone by the SPCA. Another concern was regarding the flow rate provided in the nitrate study. The flow rate is determined by the D54 technical guidelines. No public comments were received on this application. And this concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Are there any presentations from the applicant? Okay. From the applicant? Or their agent?
Sorry.
Not from the public yet, not from,
I am their agent.
okay, you are their agent.
Yes.
Okay, well, you,
Uh,
would you, give us your name, please, for the record?
Sure. Dana Keeper. I'm a senior development planner with Cobine Engineering here, representing the Finneys. In keeping things brief, I feel like Julie has covered the main points of the applications, and I don't really need to add anything. But I am very happy to answer any questions that council may have on the applications in the matter. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any presentations from the public regarding this application? Are there any presentations from the public regarding this application? Sounds weird. I did not forget that I already said that. It's just what you have to do, so. All right, questions or clarification from any members of council? Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. Through you, Julie, I'm really surprised there's no public comments for or against this, but there's absolutely nothing coming your way.
If I may, through you, Worship. There was no public comments were received on this application, even after the report was submitted.
Any other questions? Okay, so the clerk has advised me that there's a resolution to we'll do the resolution now to direct us at the end of the meeting, and we will pass the bylaw with any or all of the applications at the end of the meeting in the blanket bylaw approval process. Okay. So we need a mover and seconder. The council approve the zoning bylaw amended application Z 2023-073 for Brandon Finney, 26 Parkwood Road, Municipality of Kincardine, moved by Deputy Mayor Clark and seconded by Councillor Hinchberger. Any more discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Brandon, for your attendance this evening. I appreciate that. Moving on to our second application, we have an application submitted by Jeff and Sherry Eby, 4073 Highway 21. And at this point, I would ask Jake to come to the microphone for his presentation.
Sure. Hi all, really briefly, just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Jake Bousfield-Bastido, Jake Works. I'm just joined the Bruce County team as an intermediate planner. I'll be looking at files in Kincardine and Saugeen Shores and supporting natural heritage review across the county. So be seeing you folks lots and looking forward to working with you. So as for this file tonight, the rezoning would facilitate a proposed surplus farm dwelling severance that would ultimately create a roughly 0.8 hectare parcel containing the dwelling and a roughly 38 hectare retained parcel. That's on Highway 21 between Tiverton and North Bruce. But what's before you tonight is the zoning bylaw amendment. What that would do is allow for reduced lot size on the proposed retained parcel as 39 hectares is required. The amendment would also prohibit residential development on the retained parcel in accordance with county official plan. There is a small environmental protection zone in the northwest of the retained that will remain unchanged. And the amendment would finally add a holding provision to portions of the retained parcel with high archaeological potential given the proximity to a watercourse. And as I said, the related consent file would be considered by the county at a later date. So staff have reviewed the application in light of the municipality's official plan and county official plan, as well as the provincial policy statement, which permit these surplus farm dwelling severances, as long as the severed parcel is limited in size as much as possible, and that is the case in this situation. The only comments received were from MTO related to the access off the Provincial Highway 21. Primarily that the retained, the access to the retained, which will be a farm parcel now, be removed and a new access created along concession 10. And we are of the opinion those concerns can be addressed through the consent process. So I'll leave it there, but I am happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Boosfield Bastido.
Great.
Are there any presentations from the applicant? Do not see Jeff here this evening. Oh, there you be. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you, Jeff. Are there any presentations from the public regarding this application? Are there any presentations from the public regarding this application? All right, questions or clarification from council members? Seeing none, we need a mover and seconder. The council approve the zoning bylaw amendment application Z 2023-078 for Jeff and Sherry Eby for a portion of concession 11, lot 5, 4073 Highway 21 in the geographic township of Bruce in the municipality of Carden. Moved by councillors Kavanaugh and Stewart. Any more discussion? All in favor? That, anyone opposed? And that's carried. Thank you very much for that presentation. Moving on to the next application submitted by Alex and Rebecca Osman, 554 Huron Terrace. And once again, I would ask planner Julie Steeper to explain the report and the recommendation, please.
Thank you. The purpose of the application is to sever a vacant residential lot with frontage along Huron Terrace. A zoning bylaw amendment is required in this case to address the reduced interior side yard setbacks for the proposed single detached dwelling. If approved, the application would facilitate the construction of a dwelling on its own lot of record. A holding provision requiring an archaeological assessment for the lands containing high archaeological potential is proposed. The property is located at 554 Huron Terrace, west of Highway 21, north of Kincardine Avenue, and south of Durham Street, which is east of Lake Huron. The property is surrounded by residential uses. There is an existing single detached dwelling on the retained lands. No comments of concern were raised from agencies. We did receive 2 public comments after the submission of the report that I can now read in if appropriate.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, a comment was received from Barbara Morris, who lives at 268 Gordon Street. Please permit me to object to the proposed severing of the residential lot with frontage along Huron Terrace. First, the proposed reduced interior side yard setbacks that would facilitate the construction of the second house on the lot would create houses with a crowded, squeezed together appearance and could possibly set a precedent for others to subdivide in the zone. One legal non-conforming lot opens the floodgates to potential problems, making exception to the current minimum frontage allowance for the lot sizes will cause increased population density in the zone, and it will cramp together too many houses. Moreover, changing lot sizes to accommodate more houses and thus more people will surely create future infrastructural problems, such as those related to water, sewage, parking, etc. Finally, the proposed severance will cause crowding, and such crowding affects light sunsets and the neighbors' enjoyment of their homes. Currently, we folks on Gordon Street can actually see the lake. We will be denied the pleasure if the severance is allowed. Thank you for considering my objections when you make your decision. I also received comments in regards to Donna and Tony Swift, who live at 275 Gordon Street. Their comments are as follows. We oppose the application to rezone because we believe residential density should not increase in this area, as it could decrease the property value, including our personal residential property nearby. This concludes the comments and in my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Steeper. Are there any presentations from the applicant? Thank you. Just come to the microphone, state your name for the record, please.
Rebecca Osman. I don't have anything to add to Julie's comments there.
Can you turn on the microphone, please? Or just stand closer to it, Rebecca.
All right, is that better? All right, my name's Rebecca Osman. I have nothing to add to Julie's report, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks, Rebecca. You can sit down. That's all right. Well, if there's any questions, we'll get you to come back up again. Are there any presentations from the public regarding this application? Are there any presentations from the public regarding this application? Seeing none, we move to questions and clarification from council members. Councillor Prenger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. It's probably for the planner. Was this lot originally two separate residential lots owned by the same person when the existing dwelling was built? So they potentially merged during that ownership, or was this always one big lot?
If I may, through you, Mayor. I'm not sure of the historical nature of how these lots originally were, if they merged on title or not. I don't know if the applicant can provide some history to that, but they are one lot presently.
Thank you. Just come give your name for the record, please.
Yeah, this is Alex Osman. I'm not gonna bother. I don't know whether it was originally two lots or one. It's one of the 110 or 118 foot, I can't recall, wide lots, so I don't know if that's the original one. But Bob, who built the house, had built it on just the half intentionally to sever and sell the other half, so that's the intent. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Osman. That's good. Any other questions from council? Councillor Prenger, please.
Thank you again, through you, Mayor. In general, I don't have an issue with the severance, to be honest. However, the reduced side yard setbacks, one of the purposes of those side yard setbacks is to allow access to the backyard with machinery and stuff for maintenance of the building and excavation if necessary, if there was ever a need for it, that type of thing. Reducing both side yard setbacks to less than 4 feet does not allow for access of a 5 to 6 foot machine to be able to do any excavation, which is generally what the province says is required, a 6 foot. So I'm just curious as to why the report, or why the planning department feels like this reduced setbacks still accommodate those stipulations. Thank you.
Ms. Steeper, please.
If I may, through you, Mayor. In this case, the Kincardine bylaw reads for setbacks that 1.2 is a setback plus 0.6 for each additional partial story. So 1.2 isn't uncommon. In this case, because of the height of the dwelling, the additional 0.6 is needed. And in this case, typically we do allow for greater setbacks when we're dealing with septic systems to allow for maintenance and repair or replacement of those. In this case, in consideration of the EP area in the middle of the property, played a part in the in my planning opinion of my report.
Any other questions? Mr. Osman, please.
Yeah, just a point of clarification. The property has access from the road down below to the whole back of the property.
Any other questions from council members? Okay, seeing none, we need a mover and seconder that the council approves zoning bylaw amendment application Z 2023-085 for Alex and Rebecca Osman at 554 Huron Terrace, Municipality of Kincardine, moved by councillors Blackwell and Deputy Mayor Clark. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We'll pass the bylaw later on in the evening to continue the process along. Thanks for being here. All right, now we have an application by the Municipality of Kincardine to do some housekeeping amendments. And once again, we'll turn to Ms. Steeper for an explanation of the report and recommendation, please.
Thank you. Just a summary of the zoning bylaw amendment before you this evening. The purpose of the amendment is to remove the minimum floor area requirements for residential uses. And this will also add a new provision for non-complying buildings and structures subject to a rezoning or a severance application. If approved, this amendment would provide clarity for minimum floor areas, which are determined by the building code. And for the application processing where there are existing buildings or structures on a lot subject to a zoning or a severance application. The amendments would provide clarity and consistency in the zoning bylaw and for interpretation, and may reduce the number of requested variances on site-specific amendments to the zoning bylaw. No comments of concern were received from agencies, and no public comments were received on this application. This concludes my report. Thank you.
Do we have any comments from the applicant? Dwayne? Nope, none? Okay. Any comments from the public regarding this application? Any comments from the public regarding this application? Questions or clarification from council? Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Dwayne, why are we doing this now instead of, because we're redoing the whole rezoning, so this must be something important. Can you just sort of give us your suggestion why we're doing it now? The amendment?
Yes, through you, Mayor. Are you referring to, Councillor Stewart, the floor area removal? That was brought forth at an earlier council meeting through Jolene. And to expedite that, to get that implemented, we thought we'd go through a housekeeping amendment while the zoning bylaw comprehensive view is still underway. So it's expedited that that aspect of the zoning bylaw just on the floor areas.
Okay, great, thanks. Anything else? Seeing none, I need a mover and seconder. The council approves zoning amendment application Z 2023-096 for the Municipality of Kincardine, moved by councillors Hinchberger and Kavanaugh. Any more discussion? All in favor? That's carried. All right. We have a presentation this evening, a delegation from Dr. Chris Hauser regarding Smart Beach. And I expect he's online with us. Good evening, Dr. Hauser. This is Ken Craig. I'm the mayor here. Welcome to our council chamber. And we look forward to hearing your delegation this evening regarding the Smart Beach project.
Perfect. Thank you. I am sharing my screen right now, and thank you again for having me here, and thank you for funding this project over the last 2 years. And what I'm going to do is provide an overview of the Smart Beach project and where we are going in the next year or two. Most important thing to start off with, and just some context, is that there's about 50 surf-related drowning fatalities per year within the Great Lakes systems. Most of them are males less than 30, and Ontario has the highest proportion of drownings. Most of them are attributed to rough surf and rip currents, and the economic burden to the entire Great Lakes region is about $1.1 billion over the course of 10 years. So it does represent a significant economic impact. In part, some of that is associated directly with rough surf, but in other locations, it's associated with structural rips in particular, and that where you've got deflection and shadow rips, such as that would form on the jetty here at Station Beach. Now, not everybody drowns when they go into rough surf. It's a very complex problem. It's about the offshore bathymetry, the meteorology, the wave and tide, the surf and the setup, and ultimately how the beach users are distributed on the beach, and What is the personal risk factors that may go into it? So you might not have drownings or a need for a rescue for months, but then you might have one or two, and it's under the same conditions, or it might be under conditions that are not necessarily the strongest waves and current. Now, ultimately, as I mentioned many years ago when we started this project, lifeguards are the primary form of life-saving. They are key to life-saving interventions and rescues on beaches in Ontario. But unfortunately, only 7 beaches on the Great Lakes in Ontario have active lifeguard programs. But that is concerning, considering that the vast majority of people that we have surveyed within the Great Lakes region about what their activity is on the beach, that the vast majority said that they would go into the water irrespective of whether or not there are lifeguards present, which means that their decisions are more based upon the destination, the sunk costs of travel, versus whether a beach is safe at a given time or at a given place. The problem is that in the absence of lifeguards, warning signs aren't sufficient. Beach users tend to ignore the signs, and those signs aren't necessarily visible. There's a sign in this picture, but it's facing towards the water, and it's not one that you would see until you actually were coming out of the water. The other is that the signs need to be accurate and locally dependent. The sign is effective on the jetty, but it's actually backwards to the actual activity that is happening on the jetty. So it is this kid that is jumping into the water is actually doing something that is proper for the sign, even though the sign was intended to say, don't do what he's doing. Warning flags do work. This is one of the most dangerous rip currents in the world. This one is moving, in this picture, this rip current is moving at 3 meters per second, 9 feet per second. Michael Phelps was only 2 meters per second in his fastest burst ever at the London Olympics. This rip current has never had a drowning in it. And the reason is that the local lifeguard knows exactly when and how it develops, and he puts up a flag every day. The problem is that you have to understand those conditions at a beach. You need to know what is green, yellow, and red. And this picture, when we ask people from across North America, does this look like a safe beach? The vast majority said yes, because there were people on the beach, because there were people in the water. Those 3 people that are in the water in front of you there are standing in a rip current of 1.5 meters per second, 4.5 feet per second. That is a very difficult rip current to be standing in like that. It was difficult to get this photograph. This is a dangerous beach, but the vast majority of people we asked said that this was actually pretty safe. And the thing is that people tend to view others in the water and others' behavior as the key to safety. And in fact, if the conditions look dangerous, people don't get in the water. But if they think that the lifeguards are in fact overcautious, then they won't necessarily follow suit. So I wanted to show you this picture. It is a yellow flag day. This is Pensacola, Florida, near Mobile, Alabama. This is a yellow flag day, but I want to show you this picture. This is a red flag day. And you may say, and people, when they went to the beach, were like, why is this a red flag day? The waves look much calmer than this on this yellow flag day. The reason is because the lifeguards could actually spot a rip current. They knew that it was there. But what we found in Pensacola is that, in fact, the vast majority of rescues and drownings happened during the times when the lifeguards put up a red or yellow flag, but people were viewing it as a green, that they could say, well, you're just being overly cautious. We're going to go in the water regardless. So what you have to be able to do, and this is one of the biggest problems when it comes to beach safety in the absence of lifeguards, is that people will ignore signs and warnings if they believe that the hazard assessment is too restrictive or not representative. And those signs, when ultimately placed, need to be dynamic and local and instill confidence that they're actually based upon a real threat to safety, which is education. Because otherwise, you get what's called confirmation bias. This, if you're looking closely in the foreground of this picture, there's a red flag flying saying, do not swim in this water. But if you look at the number of people in this water, in fact, if you went to that beach, the people in the water are your better indication of the conditions, even though there is a very strong rip current directly against this particular jetty. People make decisions based upon others. And this is one of the problems that we find at places like Station Beach. And this is part of what we have found through the Smart Beach project. When you drive to Station Beach, you have a natural tendency to turn right. That is where the vast majority of parking is. And only if you are local do you know I'm automatically to turn left down the dirt road. You turn to the right, you park at that location. And if I have put a parking lot there, if I have provided access there, that beach must be safe. That is not a true statement. And you know that, but rather when you're going to the beach and you've traveled 3 hours from Kitchener to get there, and it's not 3 hours, apologize. But when you travel all the way from Kitchener to get there, your natural tendency is to simply say, well, I've got here, I'm allowed to park here, I'm allowed to access the beach, I'm going in the water, it must be safe at this location. And so some of the initial results that we have from the Smart Beach project, from the survey that some of you may have been part of in 2022, is that when we looked at the people who were occupying the beach, what we found is that the people who sat closest to the jetty, the most dangerous section, not only because of the rip current that can develop, but also because you can get onto the jetty at all times, those were people who were occasional visitors. The more occasional the visitor, the closer that they sat to the jetty, and is partly dependent upon the fact of convenience. If I drive into that parking lot, I'm going to go right towards the jetty. If I've traveled far, I'm going to have to find a more distant parking spot, but I'm still sitting closer to the jetty. Those that sat farther away from the jetty are those that tend to have been at this beach on a regular basis. They could be local or non-local, but they go to this beach more than 2 to 3 times per year. And the reason why they go away from the jetty is not because of safety, it's because everybody else goes to the jetty. And if you go to this beach regularly, go all the way to the south because there's fewer people. It's more private. It's more, you can get into the water without bumping into others. And ultimately, this leads to what's called confidence bias. Confidence is that the more that you go to a beach and you've made a decision, regardless of the water conditions, and you did not drown, you did not need rescue, you did not get into a difficult situation, the more you place confidence in your own decisions versus that of any safety or warning. And so what is needed are design nudges, ways that you can positively reinforce people and move them to spots that are in fact safer, and be able to get people out of the water in conditions like what I'm showing in this picture here when it's unsafe. So the beach safety issues that we have found through the Smart Beach project at Kincardine are that there's a combination of bathymetric and structural rip current plus heavy surf. There's a seasonal and storm dependent hazard. It's not always there, and it's spatially dependent. Sometimes it's at the jetty, sometimes it's a little bit further to the south, and that there's inconsistent and invisible signage. But the access through the parking lot, through the access zones, through the sidewalk guides behavior towards the no swim zone, the area directly adjacent to the jetty. And so the problem is that safety is dependent on those social norms, those design nudges, and we need to think about how to change that. And this is partly the basis for the Smart Beach project, is to create and develop a integrated sensor network to provide a locally calibrated risk and hazard warning that ultimately guides the behavior of beach users. That involved an integrated sensor network, which has been up for the last 2 years, wave and current modeling that started in this past spring, which we are then extending right now through the development of a machine learning approach, an artificial neural network, to be able to account for all combinations of wind, wave, water levels, and upwellings of colder water. We have done the beach user perception, objectives 4 and 6, where we get a better understanding as to who's at the beach, where they're behaving, and we are moving towards this coming year as the dynamic flag system that ultimately goes to whatever is the beach warning system that is most appropriate. But I want to show you here is some of the beach wave modeling. This is the wave modeling for the day of the drowning in
Dr. Hauser.
August. Yeah.
I don't mean to interject. We are approaching the end of the delegation time, so if you could.
Yep. I'm actually about to go right
focus
to
on
the
the
end.
highlights. Thank you, sir.
And so what we're doing right now is that we have for the actual time of the drowning in August, and I do apologize if this is a trigger for those in the audience. What we found is that there was a slight upwelling, a moderate wave conditions, and that there was a slight rip current off the edge of the jetty. But when we start to look at the actual problems of that, is that that would have been a green to a yellow flag day. And the reason for the actual drowning was the actual access to the jetty, inadequate signage, and there was potentially personal factors associated with it. So what we are doing now as we move into year 3 is we're now looking at what is that flag system? How do we be able to develop it based upon the buoy system that is offshore and figure out what is green, yellow, and red, how to implement that, and to better understand the distribution of beach users and how to protect them. So with that, I will leave it at that moment and open it up to questions or from the council.
Thank you, Dr. Hauser. A lot of information included there. Are there any questions, comments from council members? Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Hauser, for the presentation. My question is, as I understand it, there's right now, or was during the summer, a single monitoring location kind of located southwest of the South Pier. But the hazard that we're all talking about, although it can exist as well north of the North Pier, and albeit you don't tend to get the same sort of incident rate because of traffic flow patterns, et cetera. I guess my question is the monitoring that's being done at the current location, is that going to be considered to be adequate to represent conditions on both sides of each of the piers?
And that is correct. And so the buoy that was offshore provides the incoming wave activity towards both sets of jetties, as well as it provides us with the water temperatures that are coming in. That is then used, including weather data from around the region, to project a model that provides a full wave and current model for both the north and south side of the jetty, as well as our camera systems. We're looking both north and south at the time to be able to monitor beach activity, et cetera. So we developed this in a way that could allow us to project and predict what is happening on both the north and south side.
Any other comments, questions? Councillor Stanoff-Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I guess the question I have is, you got to the end of it there with the AI modeling that we're using. And I know when I was I couldn't access the data because you'd already pulled the buoy out of the water. So I went to that link that was provided to try to get an understanding. But I would like to better understand a little better understand the modeling. Like, I understand that we can have a bias to thinking there's safety. But if people understood that based on the flag system, we had a relative assurance that there is some kind of riptide out there based on what the data is telling us, it might shape somebody more than a lifeguard, because computers aren't really emotional. So I was just curious.
Yeah, and in fact, this is part of it. And one of the reasons why we developed it in this particular way is because many lifeguards in Ontario, again, there's only 7 beaches in Ontario, and with the exception of Grand Bend, almost all lifeguards in Ontario are high school students, college students who are there for a short period of time for just a couple of years. And in order to understand a beach, you need to be at that spot for 10, 20 years. And again, Grand Bend has one professional lifeguard who's been there for years. They know that beach inside and out. They know where the bar is, where the waves are, and they can project that. What we are trying to do is take that same type of information. So whether you have a lifeguard program or not, this is that baseline information to say this is green, yellow, or red. It's less subjective than that immediate decision, but it's still going to be based upon, and what I couldn't get to in the last part of the presentation, is that we are taking all this information in terms of the wave and the current data, the pictures of the water, and sending it to every lifeguard in North America and saying, would you call this green, yellow, and red? So we're basically taking all of their knowledge, bringing it together, plus the wave model, to make sure that we can find the best balance between this more objective AI model and what they would say based upon that immediate moment of, oh, I see those waves are large, I'd be a little bit more careful.
Follow up, please.
So just confirming what I heard Mike say, 'cause it's what I was thinking. So basically, you're using those lifeguards to train the model based on the data and the images you're capturing.
We are also getting the direct wave measurement and prediction of wave heights and current speeds within the inshore. And we can use that based upon what NOAA has done in the United States about this would be green, yellow, and red. but is that really relevant to Station Beach? And that's part of the problem with the NOAA system in the US, is that every beach is slightly different. And you got to be able to look at the waves and look at the currents. So we're taking our model, we're basing it on the NOAA project, but at the same time, then asking lifeguards, how would you interpret this beach to make sure that we are getting both sides of that picture, the experience and the actual objective modeling?
Councillor Pranger, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just a question that just occurred to me based on what you just said. Have you considered speaking to some locals who might be experts, even though they're not lifeguards, but beach experts because of how much they're there, to get their input as well? If they people specifically who are good at recognizing that current.
Yes, by all means. And for example, the surf shop that always sets up in that parking lot, I would trust them more than anybody else in terms of understanding waves and currents on that beach. So when I focused there on the lifeguards around North America, but really we're also going to be distributing that exact same survey to the general public and saying, how would you view this? Would you have gone to this beach and looked at these waves and said that was green, yellow, or red? Because my yellow, as somebody who spends a lot of time in the water, my yellow might be different than yours. And so how do we make sure that we understand what the public is seeing, but also get that perception of the locals who know this beach inside and out? And that's one of the things we did in PEI when we did a lot of the work with there, is that it was the locals who spent their life on Brackley Beach. They knew that beach better than anybody else, and we were able to capture it in our modeling.
Thank you, Dr. Hauser. Appreciate the presentation once again. I'm interested in seeing where this all shakes out. Yeah, whatever it looks like at the end, we don't know. We're interested in the data you're going to present to us. So, all right. Thanks very much again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Moving into staff reports, we invite our manager to come to the staff table up here, Mr. McNabb, for a comprehensive zoning bylaw project update.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Tonight we have an update from MHBC. I do believe Nick Bogart is here. Everyone might recognize him. He's been out to a few of our consultations, but just want to introduce Nick, and he's going to go through the update we've been working on for the comprehensive zoning bylaw.
I'll adjust it back up here. That's pretty good. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dwayne, for the intro. That's good now. Yeah. Great. So my name is Nick Bogart. I'm an associate with MHBC Planning, and we're working on the zoning bylaw update for the municipality. Here today to just provide a bit of an update on what we've been working on. Some of the things I wanted to cover is just talk about recent things that have been underway, talk about the input we received from the community at the open houses we previously had, and then give some information about next steps and where we're headed, things like that. So for some of the newer faces in council, I've just included a bit of background here about the zoning bylaw. So the current bylaw dates from 2003. It was last updated in 2012. And the Planning Act requires zoning bylaws to be updated 3 years after a new official plan comes into force. And with the new official plan that was approved in 2021, we've been working on the bylaw updates. So now it's a good time to do that. So we had the initial review report and community consultation that's guided some of the revisions we've been making to the bylaw. So a bit additional background on from the Planning Act. So what do zoning bylaws regulate? So the Planning Act provides the authority for municipalities to pass zoning bylaws. And I've just got a few bullets here about what zoning bylaws might include. So things like restricting the use of land and location and use of buildings and structures, prohibiting location of buildings and structures for things like floodplain, contaminated sites, things like wetlands. Regulating things like height and location, size, floor area, spacing. Some of that was the topic of the updates that were passed to council tonight too. And then also things like regulating frontage and depth of a lot, proportion of an area that can have a building and structure on it. So things like that. So that's the type of thing that we're dealing with as part of the zoning bylaw update. So there are some overarching goals that have guided the work we've done on the bylaw update so far. And as I previously indicated when I was here at council, some of those things are to, of course, incorporate the direction from the new official plan and have that included in the zoning bylaw. Conform to recent provincial policies, constantly changing, but we do what we can to incorporate whatever the current version is. Probably aware there's a new provincial policy statement now called provincial planning statement that was released. If that happens to come into force, then we'll reflect that in the new bylaw as well. We're looking at improving usability and readability of the bylaw, just to ensure it's clear. New definitions, we'll include some diagrams and things like that to help make sure that certain parts are clear. And then also utilize current information to update the mapping. And part of that is the environmental mapping from the Conservation Authority, and then updates that we made through the official plan project as well. So some of you will recognize this who were on council last term, but we had an initial review report come out, and that was prepared as a result of our review of the bylaw, consultation with the county and municipal staff as well. It provided some high-level recommendations for things to look at through the review and updates. We had the report released for review by the community, and then opportunities were provided for input through late 2022. And then that report has, and the input received, has guided our revisions to date. So some of the topics that were covered in that report are things like accessory buildings and uses, looking at secondary suites, surplus farm dwellings, looking at updated policies on environment, climate change, source water protection. We've been spending time looking at parking and what those parking rates should be. Mixed use, incorporating the direction from the official plan into the zoning bylaw on that. Addressing things like cannabis production. Looking at special provisions. Current bylaw has a lot of them, so we're trying to condense that where we can, make it more user-friendly, help out Dwayne and his staff too. And also looking at things like definitions, revising the mapping to make it more user-friendly, colored mapping now, so it's easier to tell between zones. Looking at zoning categories too to see if there's any that can be collapsed or if we need different ones, revised ones. And then things like language, and I mentioned incorporating diagrams too to just help with some of the interpretation. So following that, we had community open houses, and they were held in Tiverton and also in Kincardine. And that was an opportunity for the community to come chat with us and municipal staff, view the work that had been done through the initial review report, and we had some mapping there that people could take a look at and mark up. And we had good turnout at both events. We were able to talk to people about the project, what we were working on. I recognize some faces around council from those events. There was a comment period following that, and that went kind of towards the end of the year, and that would give people the chance to provide comments. We had a comment form. I got a little picture of it in the side there. We also developed a frequently asked question document, and that was posted and available for people to take a look at. It's got some, what does the zoning bylaw do, what it doesn't do, why are we doing it, things like that. So that just helps provide a bit of information. So what did we hear? So input provided, that was through the comment forms, online submissions. As I mentioned, we had maps at the meetings and people just marked up areas that we should take a look at. So some themes started to show up in the comments. So there was a number of requests to review the zoning for things like environmental features. Also to look at, there's requests to look at changes to permit residential uses. Some requests as well to look at regulations for things like properties along the coast and where there's beach hazards and things like that. And also requests to look at accessory use provisions, both in the urban and outside the urban area. Things like secondary dwellings were starting to crop up a lot, and that's a hot topic in the province. So we're going to make sure that's something that we address in the bylaw too. So those are the things that we've been working through and trying to incorporate in the new draft of the bylaw. So what have we been up to? So the took some time to undertake the updates to the mapping, and it's pretty time consuming to go through and update, and it's a big process, but it's important work to do. So there's that effort to do the mapping and also work on the draft bylaw. We provided the draft of the bylaw to municipal staff earlier this year for review. While that was occurring, we did some additional work on the mapping from the SVCA to make sure that was all incorporated and updated and also matched the official plan. We've been receiving comments from staff on sections of the bylaw. We've had a number of great working meetings to look at specific sections of the bylaw and just work through kind of line by line what we're thinking of changing and looking at the regulations and things that we can adjust. So that's been really helpful. And so now we're working on the final mapping revisions and edits to the bylaw to finalize the draft material, and that'll be released to the public for review. So next steps, as I mentioned, we're in the midst of working on the final draft of the bylaw for review by municipal staff. So we'll have that finished up early in the new year so that we can release the draft package for review. That will start to set up additional consultation and community review and commenting period as well for council. And we're planning to have an open house, and we're sorting out details for that with staff. And then targeting to have the final revisions then occur to the bylaw probably in the spring, with council adoption of the bylaw ideally happening around that time too. So if all goes to plan, we'll have a final bylaw in effect by early next summer. So that was it for me in terms of what we're looking at for next steps. So it's an exciting project for the municipality. It's an important one as well. So we appreciate working with staff on getting the draft to the bylaw so it can be shared and everyone can take a look at it. It's a big undertaking to do both efforts on our end and also for our staff to devote time to reviewing the draft and materials and back and forth. So it's a lot to ask to try and fit that in to get done, but we're getting there. And we'll have some further opportunities, as I mentioned, as things roll out to the community for review. And finally, just mention we're looking forward to the home stretch of working on the project and get the full draft out and get it implemented. So that was all for me for tonight. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Bogart. Before I go to council, I'd like to refer to our manager here. Are there any comments you would like to add to the presentation for clarity, or would you just like to address some questions? What's the process you would like to
Through
hear?
you, Mayor, probably the best is to, if council has any specific questions they would like to delve into, we can go over that and then we'll expand from there probably.
Any questions or comments from council? Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. This is a huge undertaking. It's probably one of the most changeable comprehensive zoning bylaws we ever done in the last 40 years. And unfortunately, what I'm worried about is that we're going to finish it, that we're going to have to do amendments to it fairly fast because our friends at county have not finished their official plans. And I think this is going to be much more of a pencil comprehensive zoning bylaw than a pen, because I think we're going to see changes. But let's go ahead. If we're 90% there, let's push it through because we need it. It's going to clear up a lot of problems that we've had over the last 10 years. So congratulations, and I'm looking forward to seeing the draft. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate those comments too, Councillor Stewart. It not only clears up the problems, but it implements the strategic plan, like some of the development issues that we are and will continue to face, just provides clarity to all them. So any other questions, comments? Councillor Blackwell, please.
Sorry, thank you. Through you, I was just going to share my hope that it ends up as a really progressive and housing friendly document. I think
we've heard a lot across the province and a lot across Canada really about the evils of zoning and it preventing housing. And I don't think that that's actually correct, but I would really like to see us create something that is showcasing our willingness and our intention to grow and to grow in the way that we want to.
Okay, Dwayne, last chance.
Thank you, through Mayor. And to you, Councillor Blackwell, yes, we all share the same vision. Maybe I'm not here as long as someone else here, but do have a fairly similar vision that you may have. And to be progressive, I think we've added a few really good comments into the document. I'm sure that Mr. Nick is tired of working with a building official on a zoning document, but I think we're very actively progressing in a good direction to get this document to what we need and the issues that I've came into my time being here, excuse me, that I've noticed in the zoning bylaw, and that's inherent with just a zoning bylaw that is 20 years old. It's been revised a few times, but 2012 was the last one. So I think we have some good comments and ideas into the bylaw, which should address maybe some variations to promote some more affordable housing, affordable lots based on size, lot coverage issues. So I hope when we have the bylaw that we bring it forward to the open house, the council will get a really good comprehensive look at where we went with this, and then provide great comments from yourself and the public on the release.
Councillor Stanoff, Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Actually, the commentary triggered a question. One of the things I find interesting is kind of the way we've grown, because it doesn't really totally make sense based on how small we were. Did you do anything creative with zoning to encourage some of the things that we want to see or should be wanting to see? I'm just curious, because you said you've been very creative, so.
Through you here, Mayor. I've been creative as much as Nick will let me in accordance with the provincial policy statement and our official plans. So again, I do appreciate Nick's help and guidance with his team to reel in where we need to, but help keep us in alignment with definitely Nick, and knows I've pushed the limits a little bit, but in the creative, we're looking at overall on what's common throughout other municipalities that we've seen. For like instance, I know Jen's brought the setbacks to side yards of 1.2. That is something that's pretty common. Having larger setbacks of 2.4, 3 meters. It's just in the way that the lot sizes have also went from estate style lots to they're just not that big anymore. So assessing a minimum lot area that needs to be addressed too, because a smaller lot is more feasible than a larger lot, and it's in keeping with the direction we're going. So again, more so when the comprehensive review comes out for comment, it'll give a good perspective.
I think that is the key point that you just made. Your creativeness has not already been implemented. It is being proposed for the new comprehensive zoning bylaw. So that's, I think we need to make that fairly clear too. Mr. Bogart, thank you so much for your presentation this evening. We look forward to seeing you frequently again in the spring. It's our desire to get this wrapped up and in a usable form for our municipality. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good night, everyone.
Next we have Corey Voisin for a report on the use and installation of community safety zones and traffic calming implementation policy. This had been deferred from a previous meeting, and staff is here to report on the update where we are with that policy development.
All right, thank you, through you, Mayor. I'm gonna throw a curveball here and take the floor. So bit of a change in direction from what the report necessarily is presented before council. So if we dial things back, council gave direction to meet with a member of council and then to bring things back forward. So we essentially have recycled the existing report and policy. However, through an opportunity to sit down last week with that member of council, do have some additional changes that we'd like to make to the document itself around community safety zones and traffic calming. So what we'd like from council is actually to amend what we're presenting this evening and to defer this and have us bring it back in Q1 of 2024. We think that we can make some refinements to the policy that will create some efficiencies for staff in the end. So I do apologize for it to be exactly worded the way it is, but just based on timing and respectful of the conversation we had with that member of council. Corey and I have chatted and would like to take a look at things and make some changes here.
Looking for a motion to defer. Councillor Stewart,
I'll make the motion to defer to within Q1 24.
seconder, Councillor Prenger. Any more discussion? All in favor? It's carried. Well done. I think that is, well, it's very well received, you know. We have no objection that with staff saying, you know, we are seeing things that maybe we didn't see before or in a different light, whatever it is, with our changing municipality. Let's use what we have. So, did we vote on that? Oh, okay, it's carried. All right. So we get carried away. All right. Next is our electric vehicle charge on grant. Need a mover and seconder. The council direct staff to submit an application to the Ministry of Transportation, the electric vehicle EV charge on program grant, moved by Councillors Hinchberger and Kavanaugh. Any discussion? Councillor Stewart?
Thank you. Just to clarify, they talk about revenue. What do these things actually make in revenue? Does anyone even have a guess? I mean, or do we even have enough history to really talk about revenue? I know we have a few of them around, but I don't know if we own any of them.
Director?
Through you, Mayor Craig. So we do have existing units within a municipal parking lot in Kincardine. Those currently are set up that we're not actually obtaining revenue. So people are charging at no cost. And that was through an arrangement with Bruce Power when those were installed back in late 2016, 2017 in that time frame. They're no longer operational, so we're not actually I guess out any costs in terms of the power that would have been produced to charge previously. Going forward with this opportunity and actually some others, we have a variety of options. We can own the units themselves, and then we can elect to set charges for those and then receive revenue for them. The other option is that we could essentially lease a unit, and the third-party company that we're leasing from would then receive those revenues. So for this evening, I don't have a fulsome answer, but just saying there are some options there, and if council wanted to seek revenue generation from them, that's something we could do.
Would it be appropriate? Are you expecting to bring those revenue generation options forward in the next report, or we need direction to staff to include that? How would you like to proceed with that? Well, I'll ask staff how do you perceive it coming forward, and then we'll consider and see if we would like you to include it or not. So,
all right. So through you, Mayor Craig. At this point, essentially this evening, what this report does is makes council aware of the grant opportunity and advises council that staff wish to proceed with an application. The next steps in that is actually completing that application and then securing a third party that we would be partnering with for the actual placement of units if we were successful in that grant opportunity. And in that, then we would come forward in that report that would come back to say we would like to go with party X. Here's the unit, here are the details, and here's how the revenue structure works.
very similar to the approach that Bruce County's taken as well. Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, in the report, it notes that one of the locations was potentially being considered that was Victoria Park. I'm just wondering, people don't necessarily spend as long there as they might.
I'm gonna
Okay.
interject here because the motion was just about applying for the grant. When we get the next report back, then we can have those discussions, but we'll just deal on the grant tonight. Okay? Very good. Moving on. Did we vote? All in favor? Yeah. What did we vote? We voted on the other one. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. No, it's very appropriate. All right, updated frozen water procedure. We have our manager, Mark O'Leary, here this evening. We need a mover and seconder that council rescind the previous policy, ES 5.1 frozen water policy approved by resolution and report environmental services 2341 implementing a new procedure for frozen water services as presented, moved by Councillors Steinhoff, Gray, and Hinchberger. Manager, good evening. Welcome.
Thanks, Mayor Craig. Through you. Upon reviewing the previous policy for frozen water services, in my opinion, it was deemed that a lot of the policy was based on a strategic look or observation from staff, based on data that the municipality had from 2014 and 15 when we last had frozen water services here. There was a solid method to track mean temperature through weather stations and then translate that to historical data as to when services started to freeze in particular areas. And then from there, we were able to include some buffers in there to basically set up a program that we would track the temperature and then implement a system prior to services being froze. As it's mentioned in the report, frozen services are a significant cost once you get into them, whether that be thawing lines, digging them up, the man hours, man time, and overtime. So we feel that we have a really good tracking of the history, which was super beneficial to putting this policy together and a better way to track frozen water services moving forward.
Questions from council? Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I think you probably caught this on the frozen water procedure. There's some stage 1, 2, 3, 4, and the temperatures there. Looks like there might have been a conversion issue when it got converted into the format of the report. So
It's really cold when it's minus 260 Celsius. Like
is
that's,
it, are there just about,
that's really cold.
were those meant to be like minus 3.5, 4.8, et cetera, for mean temperatures?
Through you, Mayor Craig. No, so the mean temperature runs. So I can't give you specific data, but when 2014 or 15, if you have a stretch of 2 weeks where say the temperature is minus 15, you're quickly at minus 300 degrees. So that tracks right through the entire winter. So when you start to hit these thresholds that are indicated, then it becomes when you start to notify people.
So is that like cumulative minus? So you just add the days. Okay, all right.
Correct, yeah.
So I understand now.
Zero is minus 270.
Yeah. Councillor Blackwell, please.
These are, through you, Mayor, this is just some thoughts. It's a procedure, so it's not really a policy that we have input in, but I would say that if it's possible to consider looking at the list of vulnerable customers and considering adding group homes and social service congregate living locations like shelters, group homes for people with disabilities, or the Women's House. And additionally, I was curious whether we have like a self-report registry for people that might be traveling or away for long periods in the winter, so that, you know, if we know that their water's already off, whether that impacts how the procedure may be implemented, but it's in your capable hands. So.
Any other questions? All in favor of the motion? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Tiverton Water Supply Environmental Services, once again, Manager O'Leary. Need a mover and seconder. The council support the recommendation brought forward to begin an environmental assessment process for the review of the Tiverton water supply, and further the council support a 2024 pre-budget approval in the amount of 200,000 to be funded from Water Reserve RF 68 for this project. Moved and seconded by Councillor Stewart and Kavanaugh. Manager, please.
Through you, Mayor Craig. So as many of you are aware, we've looked and made significant upgrades to various infrastructure through the Environmental Services Department. I think one area that may be starting to lack or fall behind is the Tiverton water supply. So we have seen things through development and the master plan for water and wastewater that the Tiverton system is within reason that it would be looking for an alternative source of water within the next 10 years probably. So we're putting forward a pre-budget approval to start an EA. This could look at various things such as slowing development in the area, maintaining or rehabilitation work on our existing wells. And it could include, as many of you are aware, that the pipeline that was built to the north did have some opportunity for connection there to pipe into the Tiverton water system. So we're encouraging council to move ahead with an EA. The pre-budget approval request would probably get this moving quicker in the sense that we would be able to come back, I'm going to say a year from now or in and around this time next year with solid suggestions for implementation for the 2025 budget. So that could include drilling a new well, securing contractors to run a pipeline, etc. So we're hopeful in moving this project forward. I would say that there's been projects delayed in the Tiverton water system because of this, which might include, say, a SCADA system, which would connect to the rest of the system. So we don't want to invest money in things like a SCADA system that may not be needed in the well site. So I think this would give us the opportunity to set the vision for what the Tiverton water system will look like for years to come.
Do you have anything to say? Questions, please? Councillor Stanoff Gray.
I have a lot, but I'll just get started with one at a time so that I'm not kind of taking over the area. But actually, I'm degressing from my pre-prepared questions that are in my notes right now based on something you said. The idea that we might have to do development constraints based on our water system, when I was just kind of assured that that wasn't an issue when I brought it up during the last developments that were brought up to our attention. And I also, you know, the more I sat and thought on how many years we had based on the answer that was provided, I wasn't sure what our runway was. Have you guys thought about what that runway looks like?
Through you, Mayor Craig. So through the water and wastewater master plan, I believe through the high growth scenario, it was suggested that 2029 could be a impact type of area. With that being said, most developments aren't built overnight by any stretch and are kind of weaned into those types of things. So I would argue that that would be 2029 would be a number that would be on the conservative side in the sense that we may need water beyond that towards the 2030s type of thing.
Yep.
So I guess through my follow-up, because maybe it can help me understand it. I'm probably not visualizing it, and I understand you have more expertise in this area. Where I guess I'm going with this is we know that there's the Karn development plan, and it sounded very much like they wanted to move forward with the building process, and that's what, 80 units or something to that effect. Then you've got the fast track or fast holdings, if I'm remembering correctly, which is another 90, give or take, units, plus the proposal of another 44, not including what Barry's construction. Are you really sure that the building's not going to happen faster than anticipated? Because it looks like those people are hoping to get shovels in the ground.
So through you, Mayor Craig, certainly no certainties, and I think that's why this report's before council tonight. If you don't move forward now, you're going to be caught behind the 8 ball. We presented this last year at budget time, and respectfully, you know, council was a new contingent at that time, and council asked for a staffing report to help guide yourselves to make a decision going forward. So that's why Mark has prepared this here this evening. But if we don't do something, essentially, you know, we've got people that are looking to develop, and beyond just those developments, we have deficiencies with your well systems. So if we take development off the table right now, you're staring down the pipe, no pun intended with that, but you're staring down the pipe looking at potentially $500,000 to $1 million in upgrades to the existing well systems over the next 2-3 years. And myself and Mark are not comfortable suggesting to council to make that investment of $1 million and then turn around a year later to say, oh, by the way, we need a new well, or we actually should have connected to the Tiverton the Kincardine pipeline. Now we need, X number of $1 million more, and that $1 million of tax dollars is actually wasted. So that's why we're trying to drive the EA to help guide us to come back to council in a year's time to say, here's what the EA has determined as our best path forward. We want to make sure that we're making timely investments and wise ones with that. So,
Councillor Stewart, please.
And I'll release the floor back to you, don't worry. Through you, your worship, I'm calling you your worship now. Anyways, this is a really interesting project, and we got to take in some consideration, because I look at this as fairly simple. We have an aquifer under Tiverton. So I'm not sure if the EA is really going to have a hydrogeologist to really understand, because there's no point even talking about wells if the aquifer is going to get contaminated. And I'm not sure how we do that, but we really need to do that in this study. We really need to understand what's under the ground. Is it going to be suitable? Is it going to be polluted or anything? Because if it isn't, if it's going to be not acceptable, then the only other choice is the water. So, I'm hoping that we're just not looking at the above ground and all that. We really have to understand the aquifer underneath, because that will really make a decision whether we go A or B. And does this EA and 200,000 do that for us? Question.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Craig, I would suggest that the $200,000 would look at avenues for exploration of hydrology, and then at that point, we'd have to come back to council to see their desire, I guess, to either drill a test pilot, which is quite a bit smaller, or you roll all in and take your chance of drilling a well in that situation. Those always have some risks involved, but I would suggest through you that it would be covered for sure.
Just for clarity, when you put out your, seeking the engineering company, you would define the parameters of what we're looking for anyway, wouldn't you? Wouldn't that be part of the EA? Like, this is what we needed to find out?
So through you, Mayor Craig, with an environmental assessment, what we'd be doing is we would be using a municipal engineer of record. We will be bringing a report in January. We've conducted an RFP, so we have a number of engineering firms that did provide submissions on that. So we'll be bringing a fulsome report back with recommendations on award going forward, and that will build into who is going to look at environmental assessments and stuff like that. So we would then sit down with them and then build the framework of what the parameters are of what we're seeking.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Using the municipal class environmental assessment that was conducted for the Bruce Power project, we're looking at a similar municipal class environmental assessment with the same stages that the Bruce Power one had, public information consultation set. Like, I don't see the word specifically municipal class environmental assessment. That's what we're talking about here.
Through you, Mayor Craig. That's correct, Councillor Hinchberger.
Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, I just want to say that I have no problems fully supporting this process going forward and evaluating our options. In reading the background research of this, it seems almost like time is a flat circle. We were here as a municipality just after amalgamation in the early 2000s and made a choice. And from the information I could gather from the slides on the public information seminars conducted at that time, the proposed connection was going to cost $1.5 million. And that would have saved us from being here today. So I hearken back to the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. So I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Councillor Stanoff Gray, please.
It's not that I don't support the direction, just to be clear, but what I'm trying to understand is, for example, like, we had the report this year within this term from BM Ross on our water state, and there was very pointed questions in that report including the hydrologist assessment of the Dent well number 2, as well as the Briar Hill well number 2. The only thing I get nervous about is that when I move into another study mode and I'm not pulling the other data points that the original folks that I had as consultants tell me what to do, right? They told us what to do to decide the viability. So I guess my question is, we've had that report for a while, so did we execute any of those items? Because it just helps me understand, right?
So through you, Mayor Craig, the water wastewater master plan was received by council in 2023 within the fiscal year. And so any forthcoming actions from that, recommendations that they have, would come forward in future budget considerations unless they were deemed an urgent matter. So those items haven't been conducted, but things related to the Tiverton water supply would be undertaken within this environmental assessment, anything that we need to look at that way. As far as any considerations for upgrades to Tiverton, being that we're speaking to that, an example being either twinning or augmenting the water main on King Street out towards the Conquer Good Ave subdivision. That information was shared with that developer, that here are details within the master plan. And in order to support your development, we're going to have to see upgrades that are going to be embedded within our agreement with you and that are going to be required in advance of you actually being able to, fully build out that subdivision.
Councillor?
I promise I'll stop after this last question. So my last question, I guess, is one of the things I find interesting. I hear some of the previous comments that have been made, Councillor Kavanagh, but I guess my question becomes, the way we've grown hasn't totally made sense. I don't think any of us expected some of the explosions that we're seeing at this point, which is great. It's wonderful for our community. But is there any grants that could help us? Like, the thing I get nervous about is if we change over the water system and there's an implication to taxpayers, and I just paid to hook up 2 years ago and you're asking me to pay for new infrastructure again when I just bought into the original infrastructure. Is there any grants that you guys could be looking for new water development in parallel lane to this assessment so that we're ready to put in those requests?
Through you, Mayor Craig. So full details of a forthcoming funding program have yet to been released from the provincial government, but there is going to be something coming out that a project such as this could fit within the realm of what that stream looks like. Historically, it's been strictly focused on health and safety and renewal of existing assets, primarily for the last number of streams, but this one actually takes a look at expansion and other opportunities. So we're anxiously awaiting those details, and if that's an opportunity, I would consider that this would be a project that would be, one of the priorities that we would consider.
CAO.
So with respect to that question and the response, this is where it's very beneficial for the municipality to have the information available to be able to submit, particularly being a shovel-ready state is what is considered when those applications are reviewed by the province. I would also suggest that this would be one of the type of matters that we might want to identify in a delegation at upcoming conferences.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Sorry to press the point, but the hydrology is going to be so important in this. So, when we go out for an EA, we got to get an engineering group, or we're going to have to add a group that really understand this, because I look at this as the most important decision, whether we go this way or that way. Because capital projects on this, like my fellow councillor said, I look at it, it's probably about $8,000 to $10,000 per household if we have to hook up to the city water. So it is a real decision, and it's a decision that we might have to make. But first of all, we really need to know what the aquifer is going to do to us now and down the road. Thank you.
So we have a motion on the floor that council support the recommendation regarding the municipal environmental assessment, just to be clear. And further, the council supports 2024 pre-budget approval in the amount of 200,000 funded from water reserve. All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Bruce Power Water Agreement completion of phase one work and phase two scope of work. And this is through our director again, once again. There are some councillors that are absenting themselves. We need a move. Do we have a mover? Oh, yeah. We need a mover and seconder that council direct the mayor and clerk to execute the letter of agreement regarding phase one completion of work and waiver, moved by councillors Stewart and Kennedy. Director, please.
Through you, Mayor Craig. Essentially what's before council this evening is formalization of next steps. So it's council endorsing that we've completed the phase one scope, and it's allowing us to move into phase two. And so with that, that would allow Stantec to commence with the detailed design work and then work towards tendering of the project. Bruce Power is also in support of advancing this.
Council questions? Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you, and it was good detail too. I'm glad we're going into the detail, the reimbursement. It looks like our portion might be about 300,000, is that correct? And Bruce Power's portion will be about 1 million? That's sort of built in the thing, sorry, it's under reimbursement. And then Bruce Power shall not be liable for the cost, so we do have to be very careful how we start to, especially when we get into one of these projects, because we're finding out, and it's no fault of staff, we're just finding out costs have gone way up. And if they're holding their dollar value at 1 million, I want to make sure we can still get through with 300,000. So best of luck. Thanks.
Further questions? All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Express our pleasure in continuing the work forward. Sorry, Adam, I wasn't talking to you. Okay, 5-minute bio. All right, I'd like to call the council meeting back to order again. We're on Jeffrey Golf, sorry. I know. Mount Forest Ave reconstruction tender, environmental services. We need a mover and seconder. The council award the contract for reconstruction of Mount Forest Ave to Omega Contractors in the amount of $1,116,482.11, inclusive of the non-refundable portion of HST moved by councilors Blackwell and Kennedy. Director, please.
Thanks, and through you, Mayor Craig. I guess some positive news from tendering for maybe a change, if I reference it that way. So we did come in under budget. We've had good relations and good outcomes with the low bidder, Omega Contracting, over the past number of years, and did see 5 general contractors close here, which is nice to see for a change too. Aside from one of the vendors, 4 of them were, with at least in a range of reason. Tied to this report, which is the report following this, actually relates to the financial agreement with the land beneficiaries. So this here will complete the reconstruction of Mount Forest Ave. The secondary report speaks to the existing condition and talks about how we set up the existing funding breakdown and some of the reasons why we ended up making changes to that as well. So anyone who's familiar with Mount Forest would know that the road is in very poor condition. And so on our end municipally, we do need to replace that asset or renew it. And in doing that, at the same time, we're going to be installing extension of services that will support the Ontario Peninsula farmlands behind the hospital, as well as the site for 7 Mount Forest. And then those 2 parties are paying full for the water and wastewater upgrades to support their future needs. And then our road will be extended just easterly of the women's house that's there now. Again, if anyone's familiar with the area, the road actually stops much before their driveway, and a typical approach is that we would have a fully serviced municipal road past an entranceway that's private. So anyways, this report here, just looking for council to support awarding it to the low bidder. And then the next report speaks to the funding agreement.
Could you take an estimate on the score of that road on that chart? Would it make a 4 maybe? 31.
Yeah. So through you, Mayor Craig, in the next report, so the pavement condition index was a 31 when that was done 2 years ago. I would guess that it's lower than that now. So,
Councillor Stewart, you had a question, please.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this road's been badly, does a long time, doesn't matter. What I'm really interested in is that it's going to cost a lot to get this road fixed. We talked about, future development up in that area and OPF lands and everything, but we also talked about potential danger having Mount Forest, and we were talking about something expansion and sort of take away the hospital exit. Now, I don't see that in the report. Is this like phase 1 and then you're going to have phase 2? Because we talked about maybe wrapping it around and actually eliminating that hospital speedway, because it's just going to become an accident waiting to happen. Thank you.
Yeah, so through you, Mayor Craig, and a great point to raise, Councillor Stewart. So in the consultation process with not only the developers, but the Women's House, the pharmacy, the medical clinic, and the hospital, we've talked about a number of things, including, how do we maintain access to all of those, delicate sites during construction. But one of the components was around the current alignment of the entranceway for the hospital as it meets into the road allowance for Mount Forest Ave. So through this reconstruction, we'll actually be straightening out the alignment of Mount Forest Ave. So there's a bit of a kink in the road as you come off Queen Street now. It will be pushed where it meets Queen Street to the south, and so it'll be a straight alignment going up the hill. And then we'll be creating a T intersection with the hospital entrance. So instead of it wrapping into the Queen Street intersection, it comes down the hill and then ties directly into Mount Forest. And then for future opportunities, if development does take place with the OPF lands, we've had preliminary discussions with the hospital about relocating their entrance between the helipad and the women's house and coming out in that area to tie into to Mount Forest and abandoning the existing hill. So that's something they were supportive of in concept and interested in talking about as things advance down the road.
Further questions? All in favor of the motion? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Next, Mount Forest Cost Sharing Agreement, Development Services. Need a mover and seconder. The council enter into a cost sharing agreement with Ontario Peninsula Farms and 1342829 Canada Inc. for the purpose of upgrading Mount Forest Ave to support future development while completing reconstruction of an amortized asset. And that the 2023 budget be amended to increase the municipal funding contribution by $380,000 using the funding sources identified in Staff Report Development Services 2023-36. And that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign all documentation. Moved and seconded by Councilors Kavanaugh and Hinchberger. Director, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Craig. So within the body of the report, we've provided a table just to hopefully help identify to council what the original funding breakdown was, what the revised budget is for this project and what the differences are. And also where the different funding sources were originally presented in the 2023 budget as to what we're proposing today. A couple of the changes that I'll highlight is that the water and wastewater reserve funds had, although minor, but still contributions in the original funding breakdown. We've eliminated those, and so through the discussions with the developers, the municipality really isn't gaining benefit. We're not replacing any existing water or wastewater infrastructure, so we've put that cost solely on the developer. The big change for us is that our cost breakdown for the life cycle reserve portion. So if you picture that being your road assets, so road bed, road surface, bringing it to an urban standard, so storm sewer, gutters, all that kind of stuff, sidewalk. We had put a higher contribution to the developer previously. The biggest change from here, we knew the road was in poor condition before, but at the time when we set those, we didn't, the original numbers didn't have our PCI data in full, and we also didn't have our borehole analysis. So we went out and actually drilled holes to figure out what the soil composition was to see if we could reuse any of the granulars. And so through that, it's determined that all the granulars, and which I'm sure may not be shocking, but all the granulars need to be replaced. So we've elected to take on that cost in full to basically say, with or without you, we needed to reconstruct the road right down to the bottom of its bed. And doing that, we're going to put storm sewers in, we're going to put sidewalk in and curb and gutter as we would with our urban standard approach. And so that's essentially why we've increased our allocation there, and the developers have a lesser share. Aside from that change, so with that, we are asking for a budget amendment to address that. But aside from that change, both development bodies are supportive of not only the development, but also awarding of the contract. And one of the parties has signed and entered into the agreement with us, and the other party, it's with them for signature. And they are also supportive of going ahead in both verbal and written context previously. So from our end, we feel that we've written an agreement that protects the municipality and addresses both our needs and looks at the future development. And then one other thing just for notation is that we did increase the sanitary sewer size by a nominal pipe size at the request of the developer, just to safeguard things in case, development actually was at a higher density than what even regular standards may look at us designing things to.
Questions? Councillor Stewart, please.
Anytime you're talking about taxpayer dollars, I have to say, because, we always talk about the life cycle reserve fund, but you know how that's funded. That's funded by our tax dollars, and that's the only money that it comes from. So you're looking at probably a 50% increase. It's not a question of the project, but it's a question that So this is a pre-approved, so we have money already in the 2023 budget of 380 or something like that, I think, it doesn't matter. And you're asking for another additional 380 pre-approved in the 24 budget?
So through you, Mayor Craig. Yeah, so we do have 390,000 approved from the Life Cycle Reserve Fund in the 2023 budget. And we're looking to amend the 2023 budget to add the 380,000, so that way construction, the contract can be awarded, and then that would be essentially deemed as a carry forward project into 2024. So the expenses would all be incurred in 2024 then.
Okay, I can live with that. I can live with that because we have to identify it in 24 somehow. Because we just can't sort of, because, you know, let's be honest, we're a little bit over budget in the 23. When we finally have a wrap up, I think we found out that some of our cost estimates were lower. So I guess I can support this project and all the powers. And I just hope development comes, because it's terrible to have a road only going one way and $1 million road that we don't see future development. So this is a little bit of a speculation, but it sounds like you got OPF and the other gentleman ready to go. So we're gonna have to count on that. Thank you.
Other questions? All in favor of the motion? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Kincardine Avenue Servicing Extension Tender. Once again, Development Services, need a mover and seconder. The council award the Kincardine Avenue Servicing Extension Tender contract to the low bidder Omega Contractors, Inc. for the tendered amount of $1,723,500.72, contingent upon a signed cost-sharing agreement with benefiting landowners. Mover and seconder, Councillor Hinchberger and Kennedy. Director, please.
Thanks, through you, Mayor Craig. So again, had a reasonable turnout in terms of parties that closed on this, and ended up with you know, a positive bid financially under the budget figure that we had allocated in 2023. In that 2023 budget allocation, it was to be 100% funded from the beneficiaries, so being landowners / developers. The difference between this and the Mount Forest approach is that I have yet to finalize an agreement with those landowners, strictly because I'm dealing with 15 beneficiaries here versus the 2 on the other. They have been presented with basically a methodology formula in terms of what their capital cost share and benefit would be to having the servicing extension. We also have included lands on the west side of the highway. There are parcels there that can benefit from water and wastewater extension across the highway to provide service laterals and to, you know, to make their municipal lands fully serviced off of municipal water and wastewater. So what I'm asking council this evening is to consider awarding this contract contingent on getting a funding agreement in place. Within the closed tender document, there is a stipulation within that in terms of how long this tender is till it's irrevocable. And so that lapse date is the later part of January. So the intent of staff is that we would come back at the first meeting in January, hopefully with a funding agreement for your consideration for a signature on that. And then this contract could be awarded following that.
Questions? Councillor Kavanaugh, did you have your hand up? Oh, Councillor Steinoff, Gray, please.
So I just want to clarify what I'm hearing, and maybe I made a misread in the risk analysis. So I thought in the risk analysis, it was that we were front loading the costs with the potential of not necessarily recouping if the development didn't happen. But in the way you spoke to it a few seconds ago, it sounded like 15 parcels would get an allotment to, and I think there was 16 maybe, unless I'm wrong. So we'd only be front ending 1, which isn't as big of a risk, but could you help me understand what that looks like?
So through you, Mayor Craig. So within this, I've spoke to 16 parcels. One of those parcels is actually west of the site and would benefit from upgrades to the sewage pumping station. So I've got 15 parcels that would actually benefit from the water wastewater extension easterly. As far as what the risk analysis and all of that is to the municipality, it would depend on what type of agreement we enter into. If we looked at a front ending agreement that the municipality carried the costs, There's a couple ways that that outcome can look. The municipality could front end it to a point of when development permits are required for sites. So that would be a significant risk to the municipality, looking, you know, down or at a crystal ball that we can't really forecast. There is opportunity in the Municipal Act to assign capital charges for water, wastewater, and servicing infrastructure. And you could set that up to be amortized over different intervals back to the property owners. So those would be a couple variables that, that we would present in this agreement. That would come back to council. But as far as what it exactly looks like, we have to get there with those developers yet to present something to council for consideration, unless council had direction on that to staff as well.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Adam, you and I have gone through the no frills and the SOBIs, and you know, it was $5 million to $10 million we speculated on. And it wasn't the staff, it was really the council at the time decided that we needed growth. And unfortunately, the growth has never taken place, so we're still out. This is an interesting offer. First of all, I really like the bidding. You had 4 solid bids. It looks like you got the right company. I know Omega. So I'd like to see that because we haven't seen that all last year or this year. The other thing is, I'm really interested. You really put yourself in a tight pipeline, 30 days. So this contract would only last basically guaranteed for the price for 30 days. Can I sort of ask, who's really pushing this? I mean, you know, I assume we just didn't think about it ourselves. There's got to be somebody. I know someone's developing a motel, hotel, and everything else. Are they asking for it? Like, who is really sort of pushing us towards this? Because we talked about this, but we never knew a timeline yet. Thank you.
So through you, Mayor Craig, and something I guess for all of council, like whenever we deal with a project around provincial highway, so MTO corridor, it is quite cumbersome just to get to this point. In reality, we would have loved to have been out at this point and had agreements long ago. And really why I'm saying that is that in a perfect setting, we would have had these arrangements all in place before the development started with the hotel on the corner, at the northeast corner of the site. So the reality is that site is currently unserviced and they're required under their development agreement to connect to water and wastewater servicing. If they continue to construct at the projected timelines that they presented to us, they want to have servicing connections by probably about end of Q2, so around June of next year. So our construction contract has been laid out to accommodate and achieve that. But in terms of the actual agreement, not having it in place, yeah, it's a chicken and an egg scenario, and the 60-day irrevocable period. Our typical tender process would look at either 30, 60, or 90 days. If for whatever reason we can't meet that January 21st deadline, one of the considerations will be to ask Omega if we can have a 30-day extension to that at their tendered rates. So.
Councillor Hinchberger, please. We'll come back to you, Bill.
Thank you through you, Mayor. Originally, my question was going to be about whether it's premature to do this. One thing I learned from the 2023 budget is when council approves something, it doesn't necessarily guarantee schedule. So I'm trying to imagine in my mind here in 2024, are we looking at the possibility that we could have construction on Bruce Avenue, Kincardine Avenue, Russell Street, and Queen Mount Forest, all within the 2024 year? Or are we like biting off more than maybe we could chew?
So through you, Mayor Craig, I'm confident in our team and our engineers that we could complete all of that. If you take a look at the Queen Street undertaking, if you take a look at the Huron Terrace project, if you take a look at a number of projects over the last 5 years, we've invested significant dollars and completed a number of those projects, you know, within the timeframes allotted based on either delays from supply chains and stuff like that, or just naturally within, you know, good construction sequencing. One thing you'll see when things all do wrap up, the Queen Street project, as an example, is going to finish and be completed under budget. So I'm quite confident in our team that we can handle those. Mount Forest Ave and Kincardine Ave, those projects are going to be done in, you know, kind of the spring to early summer timelines. Russell Street essentially is an MTO guided project, and it's been on the books for a number of years, and I'm slightly smirking because I'll be surprised if it actually takes place next year, based on how things have transpired to date. But if it does, it'll be led by their group. We'll simply be you know, a third party in that you know, stake. Bruce Ave, at this point, we still have to complete all of our engineering on that and then get out to tender and then go to construction. So I would anticipate that Bruce Ave is going to be a project like July, August, September, October kind of timeframe. So anyways, long way to say I'm confident that I think we can handle those things. And when we get into budget, you're going to see things such as carry forward projects, and you're going to look at dollar values and think, oh my God, we didn't complete things. But actually, when you actually start to peel the onion back, you're going to see $2 million for this project, another 1.5 for the Mount Forest project. So that dollar figure for infrastructure and development totals at 10 million, but you start taking a few of these projects out. Durham Street Pump Station, which was awarded but hasn't started, our meter replacement at $1 million. I guess I'm just basically, going on to say that I'm confident in our ability to get all of these done.
Mark's looking a little nervous down there, but that's all right. Councillor Stewart, question still?
Yes, I agree with you. Mark will look really nervous. This is an interesting project, and when we did it last term, we didn't do it right. And I think we got the capability of doing something right. We also have to, and maybe I'll ask some of the staff to look at an economic sort of picture and plan. There's a lot of property that you're going to impact if this goes through. And, it's unfortunate, but we gotta have to start looking at it in 5 year. What is a possible tax increase we could get if those properties were developed and sort of try to analyze the risk of when it's going to be developed and everything, because it makes a huge difference. And I'm not expecting you're going to be busy enough just doing the agreements. But we also need to look at the economic impact, because if all these properties got developed, it would probably increase your taxes by $1 million quite easily. But I'm trying to understand that, and I'm not sure if we really have the expertise on the staff to sort of do a projection. But, one of us has got to do it sooner or later, because when you're risking 1.7, you really have to make sure there's a return on investment sooner or later. Good news is this particular thing, actually there is foundations in the ground, which is a good sign. And I know that they have all the piping there and everything else, and they're really going ahead on that project. So at least it's more positive than the other ones that we approved last term. Thanks. Yeah.
All right, so we have a motion that council award the servicing extension tender to Omega. There's the dollar value there, 1.7 million. Contingent upon signed cost sharing, and the directors laid that out. All in favor of the motion? Anyone opposed? And that's carried. Thank you, Director and Manager. That's some really good news, exciting news tonight. Kincardine Skating Club Facility Use Agreement. We need mover and seconder that council approve the Kincardine Skating Club agreement for a 1-year term, moved by councillors Steinoff, Gray, and Stewart. Hello there, Karen, Ms. Kiefer.
High level.
Talk to us.
High level.
Yes, through you, Mayor Craig. This is a 1-year lease agreement with the Kincardine Skating Club, and it will clearly outline their responsibilities versus the municipality responsibilities during the operation of their program. It's pretty standard in terms of insurance, terms, what they're allowed to use, when they're allowed to use it. It's kind of similar to the Bulldogs agreement, except it's for the skating club for 1 year.
All right. Questions? Any council questions? All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried. All right, we move on to the last item here from the report section, interim ladders at the Kincardine Pier motion. Director, hi, welcome this evening. Several councillors had expressed interest in bringing this off the consent agenda. They thought it deserved a more fulsome consideration. So there's no motion or anything, it's information at this point. So if you could guide us through the conversation, we would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, and I'm pleased that they have done that, because I'm pleased to speak to it. Certainly, we wanted to be upfront with the challenges that we have been incurring with completing the items that were identified in the motion. It's no secret that we've certainly shared with this council the capacity issues with low staff levels and high municipal asset inventory in the Community Services Department. When we talk about our peers and our peer safety and signage, currently right now, there's a lot of moving parts with that. There's moving parts associated with the good work that the Peer Safety Committee is currently going through. You heard from a key subject expert this evening, Dr. Hauser, with the Smart Beach program as well, which is happening in tandem. And the third one happening in tandem too is the boardwalk design. And all of these three components are coming together as one. The peer safety ad hoc has already been made aware of the signage issues and the needs to be considered and updated. At our most recent meeting, it was even suggested that some of the recommendations that came forward in 2016 are no longer relevant when we talk about our signage. And as we work through the Peer Safety Committee group and the recommendations that we'll be bringing forward to council, signage is going to be a very large component of that report. We've also been talking about the future usage of even the piers and what that may look like, and consideration will be coming forthcoming with that. And staff, obviously, in keeping with council's approach of being fiscally responsive, we are anticipating key recommendations that will be coming through the key experts with the Peer Safety Advisory Committee. So as we look at that, we're certainly aware that there's changes that need to occur there. Our concern is the signage itself as much as it is a concern of council. And at this point, in speaking with staff more recently this week in regards to the signage, which seems to be certainly an issue, we are now in a position, as things have started to slow down with our outdoor operations, we can certainly order large signs to be put up where existing smaller signs are. But as long as there is an appreciation by council that those signs will probably be changed again within the coming months based on the recommendations that come out from the Peer Safety Committee. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you for the report and the update, Jane. Just to set a little context here, that in September, we approved the creation of an ad hoc committee based on a staff report. After the report, more information became available on some past actions that had been taken in 2016 or so. So in October, I realized that a couple of people, a member on staff, were either not here or the AV quality was there. And I believe the intention of council on that night was absolutely to put in place some interim actions pending the full completion of work of the Peer Ad Hoc Safety Committee, and it had no expectation that necessarily those interim actions would remain in place after the recommendations of the peer committee. And so I think it understood that. And I appreciate the challenges that community services definitely has had in staffing. I guess my question is that we have a number of policies that exist, provide a lot of flexibility for staff for procurement of goods and services. Is there any clarity or support that you need from council at this time in order to complete this work that you just brought to our attention tonight? Thanks.
Thank you for the question and through you, and for the clarity as well. I appreciate that. If you're referring to specifically signs at this point, again, based on my conversations this week with the supervisor, we can certainly proceed with getting larger signs in place. And as I said previously, with the expectation that they may be relocated or changed.
Councillor Stanoff Gray, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I guess that kind of feeds off of one of my questions. I understand there may be changes that come from the committees that we have, but there was nothing in Dr. Hauser's presentation that really disaligned. If anything, getting the signs down that are wrong and replacing them with appropriate signage, I think is important. He obviously highlighted that. And then the other piece for me is I don't think anyone should be jumping off the side of that pier, and there was no swimming event at one point. So did we change our stance on that at some point? like the signage is still there, although not super legible, because obviously the painting wasn't maintained, but it's still there. You can see where we have the no swimming going along. So I guess I'd just like to understand if we changed our stance on that somewhere. Because I do understand that it was brought to my attention by some of the other counselors that were advertising for, surfers to come use the pier to get in and out of the water. So for me, that kind of expedites the interim actions that I would want to see. And I would really like to understand what support you need. Maybe it's that we need to have someone from outside give you some support to get that done. Maybe we have to do a tender of some sort, but I'd like to understand.
Yeah, thank you for the question through you, and hopefully I captured, got everything that you've indicated. Certainly when we talk about alignment, and it's unfortunate that we're maybe not 2 months advanced with the Pier Safety Committee so that we would be more in line with the motion that came forward. There's certainly going to be some recommendations that YASA is in keeping with Dr. Hauser has said, because I'll be honest, at our last meeting, we had several guest speakers and Dr. Hauser was one of them. And he was the one that articulated that some of the signage that maybe was in place from the 2016 recommendations should be considered to be changed. And those were more with the RIP current signage. And so with that, and I believe he indicated that tonight as well, with that now we'll be looking at to determine, well, what signage should we be putting up when we talk about RIP current. And that's more of an educational opportunity than more of awareness as well, because not only is the Pier Safety Committee, and I refer back to that as it's in tandem with the motion, not only are we obviously wanting to ensure that the correct signage is up there, but there's a whole educational process as part of that too, which we need to be making sure that we work with in tandem with that. And we are fortunate to have Dr. Hauser on that committee, and he's been a huge benefit to providing us that key expert opinion that we need in moving forward. So I'm not sure if I've answered all your questions because there was a lot of comments in there.
We'll go to Councillor Kennedy and then Councillor Hinchberger and then back to you, Councillor Stanoff. Great.
Okay, through the chair, the motion that Councillor beside me here made in October, I thought it was kind of clear that we were worried about the safety at our piers. And, I just think that signage should go up yesterday if possible, that makes it clear about the dangers down there. And I realize that we have a committee working on future recommendations, but I just really believe that now, if possible, as quick as we can do that hopefully we can get some signage down there and anything that we can to make it safer. Thank you.
Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Along the same sort of slant of providing more clarity, and I'm only speaking as one member of council, when I looked at the situation and the signage, I acknowledge that there was, in a sense, a couple of different ones. One was related to swimming permitted or not, in this case not. There was others related to warning and providing some education in nature and the rip current. And then the two of them, I clearly could see that one of them, the rip current type stuff, whether it was accurately portraying the situation, was going to be the more challenging of the two. So I guess I just was looking for reasonable efforts, wasn't expecting perfection. Thanks.
Councillor Stanoff, Gray, please.
Through you, Chair. Based on what I think is a general consensus that we still want actions to be taken in the interim, could you give us an idea of what would be realistic and also what steps have been taken thus far? Do you have the stencil for updating the paint jobs on the pier itself, understanding that weather conditions will factor in, but I'd love an update on what is a reasonable expectation to execute the motion, because it doesn't sound like any of us want to change the motion.
Through you, certainly staff did find the stencil in one of the shops early fall, I believe it was. We went digging through some rafters, and my understanding is that the stencil was applied 3 years ago and has not been updated since. And in keeping, if I can add a caveat to that, recognizing the fact that there's been considerable change in the organizational structure to potentially who was previously providing that operations process, and I suspected it was shifted somewhat. So the stencil does exist. We have found it. As far as signage, it's a matter of ordering larger signage at this point. We do not have, for the non-swimming area, we do not have a template right now, what should be considered for the current issue as far as the rip current.
Deputy Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. So to our director, if I could just thank you for your report and for the acknowledgement of the challenges that this department has had. Just perhaps clarifying the position, when you say the stencils are there, it's a suggestion that that work can be done, or is that still going to be a challenge with regards to the swimming signs and the stenciling? It perhaps would help assist this council to know what is going to be a realistic expectation, bearing in mind that the department still has its staff challenges.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, as far as the stenciling goes, depending on the conditions, I feel more confident having staff out there if conditions are calm. And being cognizant of the fact if the paint is going to be applicable, if it's going to apply in the current conditions as well. Like ideally, it should be done in April, in the spring. As far as the question for the signs, we can proceed with ordering those now. I have one park staff person right now, and so obviously it's been a mad rush for not making excuses, but we've had a number of activities that have been put on our plate that historically would not be on community services plate that we've been completing. So that has, we've now reversed that and completed those Christmas activities, which were a mad rush. And that one person can order those signs, and they will be a larger sign that was down there already. And again, I say that they may not be in the same location come spring.
Follow up, Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Director. And really the emphasis, I think at this point for this council, is to try and support you in getting this done. It's certainly not one of criticism. And so I make that clear. So when you talk about having one staff in the department at the moment, that's park staff, it's not to set any unrealistic expectations once again. And I bear in mind the fact that it's going to be contingent to some degree upon the weather. But you sound like you're fairly confident that the signs at the very least can be ordered and stenciling perhaps can be done in the near future, if that's correct. But once again, it's not to set unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, and certainly through you. Again, it's cognizant on weather, and I want to be clear about that. I also want to be clear, and I think I was somewhat clear about this in my report and what I've shared with you this evening. This is far bigger than signs. It's far bigger than a stencil. I can't stress enough the moving parts that are part of this, that, you know, as you know, I was not here at the October meeting, nor was I here. I was out of the country when the agenda came out, or we would have had a conversation with staff internally about what that looks like moving forward. And so with that in mind, you know, obviously we want to do the right thing. We want to make sure, again, I come back to being fiscally responsible. I also am cognizant of the fact, the image to the public, if we put out signs and then they're changed in 2 months later, and that confusion that can cause. So that's why I rely on, you know, I'm your key subject expert, but I also have key subject experts as part of the committee too, that we're working towards. And so that's why I wanted to make sure that council was aware of the full picture moving forward. So it's far more than signs and stencils as well.
Kavanaugh, Steinoff, Gray, Hinchberger, Stewart.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, I can certainly empathize with the position of council feeling a tad of frustration right here. But I also think, from my perspective as sitting both on the peer committee and being a member of council, it was beneficial tonight to have Dr. Hauser come and present, because I saw a lot of the questions being asked or questions that were being addressed within that peer committee. And I can tell you that progress is happening and it's moving forward there. And having that taste of that presenter come through, who was only just one of several experts who came forward, really highlights the spectrum of how complex this issue is, and how, as much as I would love to see actions taken now to get an immediate result, there's a nuance to this that goes deeper than just the put the signs back where they were, or spray paint over the existing spots to make them brighter.
Counselor,
Um,
yep.
Thank you through you, Chair. So respectfully, sorry, Rory. Um, you know, the no swimming on that pier is an important thing. There's been times when the conditions have been rough and I've seen other people just through the passerbys that are nearby say you don't want to go in there right now. You don't want to rely on that. So I understand that progress is happening through these committees and that's fantastic. But I'm not against having staff reach out to Dr. Hauser and ask which sign he would like to replace the current rip sign. I'm sure he has something in mind. But like understanding a riptide, I had a colleague at work explain it to me. I didn't understand it. I would have been in trouble, and I've been in one and majestically got out by accident, but did not know that there was a really simple process where you swim on a straight line out. I didn't know that, and I've grown up on this beach. So I guess my only struggle here is I think what we're asking for is actions that get put in place now, and then we bolster on those actions. And, you know, obviously, I know you're going to be looking at the ladders, but I don't think the motion asks for the ladders to all be replaced. It asks to understand which ladders where the extensions were damaged or not in place. So it's understanding the extent of condition. It wasn't necessarily the replacement. So I am cognizant of the fact that you have some staffing issues, which leads me to the question I was going to ask, which is this something where we could have a committee similar to like the trees and trails? Because like different committees that assist us, because I'll be honest with you, our surf club,
Counselor, we're moving way off
sorry, just saying.
the intent of the conversation this evening. So, yeah, I know you, yeah, I know, but adding another committee doesn't speed up the process at this point. So, Counselor Hinchberger, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. It's related to given, that's okay. Got it. It relates to helping provide the Director of Community Services the support they're required. It's a question for the CAO. I can imagine that the skills that are necessary in order to complete this don't exist only in community services. So I guess what I'm wondering is given that this is a safety issue, is there not an opportunity to assign, say, staff from, for instance, infrastructure and development to assist the under-resourced community services in this regard?
Hear you, that's a question that I would say is weather dependent and because it just does depend on what it is that they are required to do to meet minimum maintenance standards, recognizing that it's been fairly mild for part of this winter, but also expecting snow squalls this evening. So it's dependent. So perhaps.
It is possible.
Counselor Stewart, please.
Thank you. It's an interesting conversation around the council through you, Mayor. Dr. Hauser really sort of expressed something to me that scared the poop right out of me. When he said the drowning had nothing to do with the riptides or anything, probably that would have been a green flag or a yellow flag. And that's really interesting. Now, what I'd recommend to put this to bed right now, because we're going to have a longer discussion, is we just close the piers until March 1st while everyone's working on these things. Because we're lack of staff, we're right in the middle of a committee meeting that's going to come with recommendations and everything. So why don't we just lean towards the safety aspect and close those piers until March 1st? Be done with it. And by that time, we should have a game plan and a safety plan and all the other plans that we can reopen them starting March 1st, I'm hoping. So my motion is to close the piers effectively immediately until March 1st. Thank you.
There's a motion on the floor. We need a seconder. Counselor Blackwell, seconded. Director, can you speak to that, please? If there's that is a challenging motion for which staff has had no time to consider at this point. this evening. So it is it's one of those things, for any of us, it's yes or no. For staff, it is, yeah, but what about this? What about that? So, I'm not gonna tell you can't consider the motion. I'm telling you to think through the reality that we think best when we get a little bit of staff input before we vote on something like that. Any other council questions? Councillor Hinchberger, please.
Regarding
Regarding
this
the
motion.
motion.
That's correct.
Just regarding the motion.
A question or comment regarding the motion at hand. So ordinarily, I might agree with my colleague if we would actually implement a hard barrier. But my experience and my observation is that when we essentially close the piers, it's done in a way where there really is no barrier. And so in this circumstance, I feel the best course of action is just to do a good job of posting the hazard. Thank you.
Just for clarity from council's perspective, acknowledging that they will likely be replaced based on the recommendation of the ad hoc safety committee. Is it adequate for the municipality, and I will expect your guidance too, Director, is your expectation that there are just signs at the entrance to the piers saying no swimming? If in the unlikely event that we cannot get the stencils done, is it enough just to have 2 signs that say no swimming or no jumping off the pier? Well, I'm going to ask our director first. Is that plausible, possible, wise, keeping in mind once again, like you haven't had any time to consider this question except for like 4 seconds, so.
Thank you for the question. If that's council's direction, we can certainly put those signs up at the entrance of the piers. Granted, I don't think there's many people swimming out there right now, but we can certainly put those up for the short term to, for the purposes of that. May I talk about, 'cause I think you did start to ask me a question and I'd like to talk about the pier closures, if that's all right.
Absolutely, we're still on that motion.
Okay. That is a conversation I can share with this group that we had long conversations at our peer safety ad hoc committee meeting in regard to the impact of closing piers. And we've done research in other communities who have closed piers. And we talk about at our ad hoc committee having uncomfortable conversations to have comfortable conversations. That's an uncomfortable conversation in this community, particularly when there's a lot of nostalgia with the piers and the usage of the piers over the years. We recognize that there are municipalities that have put up, that have barricaded their piers. And when we asked why, it's typically because there's been a drowning. There's been an incident that has happened that they went through the uncomfortable conversation to close the piers. There are some really good models out there, again, that the ad hoc committee will be reviewing, and you can be guaranteed that there will be a recommendation coming through our report that will center around opening or closing of piers. I'm not necessarily saying full-time, I'm just saying that there'll be a recommendation coming forward.
Councillor Stewart?
You made a good point, and through you, I'm just looking at temporarily because there's a lot of issues that you can bring into the pier for safety reasons, and you really need to. I mean, even during the winter, when you get ice, we don't have any railings or anything on those piers. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can improve, and all I'm doing is say, let's put this safety first. Let's close the piers, tell the public why we're closing the piers. We're working on everything, and we're hoping to reopen them March 1st with a whole safety plan. That's not a huge commitment. And it also allows everybody on staff and committees to get their acts and to understand and to go through all the complexity that committees do and come with a very good plan back to council. So I don't understand why there's a huge problem with, putting a couple little signs at the end aren't going to make it. Just close the piers for a couple of months. Thank you.
Councillor Stanoff Gray, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I guess the only question that is coming to mind right now for me and I am not a surfer, just to be clear, but I feel like we have a lot of advertising promoting the surfing conditions here in Kincardine and how until there, as long as there's no ice, you can still go in and out. Um, and it's ironic because the people in that case that we would be protecting are the folks that Dr. Hauser's using to kind of validate his AI model because they really know those water patterns. So I guess for me, I was just curious if you knew how far that advertisement campaign went because I just learned recently about it. So.
Can I address that to our manager of strategic initiatives? Whether you could speak to the advertising campaign, please, Ms. Fiuzi.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Craig. We've actually, since the situation happened, we've really scaled down on that. That is something that is advertised in the past. I know that the surfing organizations, we actually just had a conversation yesterday with them around marketing in the future. And we were talking about how to sort of balance out the cautions there but really we have scaled it down. I'm not sure which sites you're referring to and I would be happy to look those over and see what we can do if there's something that's concerning council.
Councillor Prenger, please.
Thank you through the chair. I'm curious if it has come up during any of the conversations with the surfing community here that the wind direction required for to create the rip current is not the winds that create the ideal waves. So therefore, when people are surfing, there is no rip current. It's not that dangerous for them. We do use the pier to jump in because it's easier than paddling out all the time. You have a flotation device that's often 6 or 8 feet long attached to you. Surfing is not swimming. It's very different. So they're very knowledgeable of the situation, of the conditions, of the beach. But I feel like when we focus on the safety of the surfers in the fall and winter, we're not addressing the real issue.
So the real issue that we're talking about is the closure of the piers. That's the motion on the floor, which we're going to address at this point. So the motion on the floor is that we close the piers until the, I'm sorry, March 1st.
And we're hoping to report.
Well, they're due the end of February. So the motion on the floor is we close the pier till the end, piers plural, till the end of, or the 1st of March. All in favor? Anyone opposed? So that motion was defeated because there, because of abstentions, there's only 3. All in favor of closing the piers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Motion passed. Okay. Call for an amendment. Oh. Notice of motion at the call for an amendment to the legislation acts. These were issues that were pulled off the consent agenda at a council meeting and asked for support by one of the council members. So we need a mover and seconder that the municipality of Kincardine support the Township of McKellar's resolution regarding a call for an amendment to the legislation to include digital publications as an acceptable means of publication and notice requirements for provincial acts and regulations. Moved by councillors Stewart and Steinoff Gray. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried. Resolution, need a mover and seconder that the municipality of Kincardine support the municipality of Wawa's resolution requesting the government of Canada to support Bill C-310 and enact amendments to subsections of the Income Tax Act in order to increase the amount of tax credits for volunteer firefighting and search and rescue volunteers from 3,000 to 10,000, and that a copy of the resolution be shared with MP Ben Lobb, Association of Fire Chiefs, and Association of Municipalities of Ontario. Mover and seconder, Councillors Prenger and Stewart. Any discussion? Councillor Prenger?
Thank you. Through the mayor, I brought this motion forward because I recognize that our community relies upon a volunteer firefighting service, as well as many of our neighboring communities. And they deserve this as a minimum, as from what I can gather. The current amount that they can claim and things like that was introduced in 2013. It hasn't been updated. Incomes and how they're affected has definitely changed since then. And I think we can do this as a minimum to at least show our support to those essential services that help us out in our community.
Councillor Steinhoff Gray, please.
Just building off of what Councillor Pranger brought forward, because I believe I also mentioned this one in the consent because it was important to me. 71% of Canada's total firefighting power is volunteer firefighters. So 71% of our fire force for the entire country is volunteer based.
All in favor of the motion? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Regarding automated speed enforcement systems, we need a mover and seconder that the municipality of Kincardine support the municipality of Wawa's resolution requesting the Ontario government amend the Highway Traffic Act to permit municipalities to locate an automated speed enforcement system permanently or temporarily on any roadway under the jurisdiction of municipalities and as determined by municipalities, and not be restricted to only community safety zones and school safety zones. Councillor Kavanaugh and Councillor Steinhoff Gray, any discussion? All in favor? Sorry, Councillor Blackwell.
Thank you. Through you, I'm having a bit of deja vu because I feel like we may have supported a similar amendment before, but I did just really want to say, in a rural area with, I think, 500 and something kilometers of roads, I think it's really important that we explore this as a potential option.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, this is something that the Police Services Board has also flagged as something that has a high potential to impact our community in a positive way and do so in a way that's effectively cost neutral, with agreements with the companies that use these devices. The sticking point, of course, is getting the shift in provincial government thinking. So with this support here, we can start moving that needle towards. And then hopefully when our traffic calming policy comes back from our director and our manager of infrastructure, we can add automatic speed enforcement to the list of measures considered viable to implement controls. Thank you.
All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Appoint acting clerk, mover and seconder that the chief administrative officer, Jolene Belchamber Glazier, be appointed acting clerk when it's necessary for the clerk to leave the meeting for the purpose of taking minutes for the December 13th, 2023 closed and open meetings. Moved by Councillor Blackwell and Kennedy. All in favor? It's carried. Consideration of bylaws. We need a mover and seconder that the 2024 rates and fee amendment bylaw be deemed to be read first, second, third time, finally passed and numbered as bylaw number 2023-197. Moved by Councillors Inchberger and Deputy Mayor Clark. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Appoint Ron Simmons and Matt Cottrell as interim acting fire chief. We need a mover and seconder that the appoint Ron Simmons and Matt Cottrell as interim acting fire chief be deemed to be read first, second, third time. Finally passed and numbered as bylaw number 2023-198. Mover and seconder, Councillors Kavanaugh and Pranger. Is there any discussion? Councillor Stewart?
Yes, through you. We actually have an agreement, a firefighter agreement. When someone is acting, I believe for 3 months, they actually start getting the pay like a fire chief. So maybe you can describe to me, when does Ron and Matt actually start getting pay as fire chief with reference to our bylaw? And that would be a question to Jill.
Do you want to explain that?
Through you, Mayor. Sorry, I don't have the bylaw in front of me, but yes, there is reference to stepping up into positions. But I'm not looking at that for the exact dates. Sorry.
Could you circulate that to the council when you find that information? Oh, yes, Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. So what's the impact? You need to tell us what the impact's going to be. If these people are going to be acting and they're going to be raised in pay, I mean, that could be what, 60, 80,000? That's not part of the report here. So I think that's sort of important that we know, or how long are we planning to have them? It's sort of said in the report that we're gonna have them until we appoint a new fire chief. When is that going to happen? There's a lot of areas up here that are very vacant, so I can't support this right now the way it is. Thank you.
Sure. With respect to the financial implications, I would not anticipate any changes in the financial implications because with the departure of the former fire chief, I'm not paying that salary.
But just a follow-up, but if you have two fire chiefs, you're gonna be paying them both the same, or you're splitting the income? Like, I don't understand that. After 3 months, they'll be getting the same income as our existing fire chief, but both of them will be paid for fire chiefs. So I'm a little bit confused here that you say there's not going to, yeah, for 3 months there might not be, but eventually there's going to be a cost. And if these two gentlemen are going to be fire chiefs interim for the rest of the year, there'll be a huge cost. So I'm a little bit confused about, this, sorry. And that's why I just,
Any other questions? What? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so through discussions, we're quite pleased that both the deputies are willing to step in, and we are working on contracts. It would be about sharing the position. Neither one of them has the capacity to take that on full-time.
then I'd like to make a friendly motion that we defer this until our meeting in January, just to get some of those details and let our CAO actually do the contracts. So we know what the financial impact's going to be to us, because right now, they're already acting. We've already approved that. I'd like to know exactly what's going on. So could we defer this? I recommend a motion to defer this to our January, what's our January meeting, on 13th? 10th, January meeting, and then we'll make a decision then. Thank you.
Seconder for the motion? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor to appoint Ron Simmons and Matt Cottrell as interim acting fire chief. Moved and seconded.
Recorded vote, please.
Okay, we've had a request for a recorded vote from Councillor Stewart. As per procedure, the clerk will read names, starting with Councillor Stewart, going to the left around this way.
Stewart,
No.
Blackwell,
Yes.
Kennedy,
Yes.
Steinhoff Gray,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Hinchberger,
Yes.
Prenger,
Yes.
and Craig.
Yes. So the ayes carried. Bylaws for meeting, we need a mover and seconder that the following bylaws are hereby read, and this is like the consent agenda. If you had a pecuniary interest or a reason that you wanted one of them pulled out for separate consideration, we can do that and the hands go up. Councillor Kavanaugh.
On behalf of myself and the deputy mayor, I would like to request the Kincardine Skating Club agreement be dealt with separately.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Blackwell.
Yes, thank you. Through you, if bylaw number 8, the Bruce Power Agreement could be removed from the agenda, thank you. Or removed from this vote, yeah. Please don't remove it completely. I don't have that power.
Yeah. All right, so there will be a switch in the bylaw number as we proceed through here. I'm not going to say what the number is, but if you agree with the concept, the clerk will put the appropriate bylaw number on them for when she and I sign the bylaw. Is that appropriate? You understand what I'm saying here? So we need a mover and seconder. The following bylaws are hereby read first, second, third time, finally passed 13th of December. Amendment to comprehensive zoning bylaw. Amendment to comprehensive zoning bylaw. That's for the Finney bylaw. Sorry, that's the second one. The first one was the EB. Second one is the Finney. Amendment to comprehensive zoning bylaw of the Ostman bylaw. And then there's the amendment to comprehensive zoning bylaw, municipality of Kincardine. Mount Forest Omega, Mount Forest Avenue Omega Contractors Tender Acceptance, Mount Forest Avenue Cost Sharing Agreement, 2023 Budget Amendment, and Award Tender RFT bylaw. And we're leaving out number 8 and number 10 for separate consideration. Yes, that's award tender RFT, the number 90. Yep. We need a mover and seconder for that. Councillors Hinchberger and Stewart. Any discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. So we're going to need a mover and seconder for the Bruce Power Letter Agreement, moved by Councillors Kavanaugh and Hinchberger. All in favor? That's carried. Figure skating agreement, moved by Councillors Stewart and Hinchberger. All in favor? That's carried. Well done. Matters for information. Once again, we have the consent agenda with all the various items that will pass under one motion unless any councillor chooses to withdraw any of them for consideration. So we need a mover and seconder. The council approve the recommendations contained in the consent agenda and direct staff to proceed with all necessary administrative actions. Moved by councillors Kennedy and Stewart. Any discussion? All in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried. General announcements. Deputy Mayor, you have any general announcements?
None, other than, of course, this is our last regular meeting before Christmas. So wishing you all happy holidays.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, first, I just wanted to say that Councillor Stewart and I attended the Bruce Power Visitors Bruce C information, where he was a local celebrity and went very well. And the other announcement I have is that Santa will be coming to the Welcome Center at 707 Queen Street this Saturday, which is December 16th. He'll be there from 1 to 4 p.m. So if you were like me and you're a good boy this year, make sure you stop by and get your holiday wishes and a photo with Santa. Thank you.
Please.
Thank you. I have no announcements, but I'm sure everyone will see Rory with Santa, his best friend.
Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, through the chair, just Silver Stick, kind of an exciting time of the year. It brings a lot of tourism dollars to our municipality. 39 teams are going to participate, U13, U15, Ripley, Tiverton, Kincardine Arena. If you want to find me the 27th, 28th, 29th, and 30th, I'll be in the Tiverton Arena. Thank you.
Councillor Blackwell, please.
Thank you. Through you, I don't have an update necessarily, but I do have one coming. But this first one is from my son, who says, woohoo, for the winter break camp coming back. He's super excited about that. So really looking forward to that returning. And the other is that I did have an opportunity a couple weeks ago to volunteer at the local food bank here. And I am well versed in social services. That's my bread and butter in my daily life. And even I was really genuinely overwhelmed by the increase in need. And so it is a giving time of year. If people are able to, I would, encourage them to donate. And I have some information up on my Facebook page about what their top 7 items were. And if people need it, it is available. And I would encourage people to go and access it. They're a friendly, giving group of folks. And I think that ultimately, I would love to see policies in place that we don't need that. But for now, it is there, and I hope people will access it.
Councillor Stewart, please.
Thank you. Just wanted to tell you, to branch out, what my fellow councillor is saying, that the Tiverton Lions have decided to get together with the Good Food Box program. So we do make deliveries now to Tiverton, and we did the first one in November. And we have another one scheduled for the 22nd of December. And as you were saying, Councillor Blackwell, it is a program and various other programs that unfortunately are well used, and we really need to support them. The other thing is, Councillor Cavanaugh said it was great. There was great attendance at the Bruce Power. I noticed that Mr. Mike Renchek sat right beside me. I sat down first and he sat down beside me, and James was there and also John. And they must have mentioned 3 or 4 times that Kincardine was the host community. So I guess our message got across when I think John was here. So let's just keep that going, if you don't mind. We are the host community of Bruce Power. Thank you.
Councillor Prenger?
Thank you. I wanted to remind everyone of the opportunity to support some sponsored refugee families that have moved to our community when fleeing war or persecution. We have a refugee committee in Kincardine who has sponsored them, set them up, and they are doing a bottle drive fundraiser to raise money to continue that initiative. So bring your empties from New Year's and all that stuff. It's a sort of self-serve drop-off. There's no time frame. You can come at any time. There'll be a trailer at the end of the driveway at 417 McCullough Crescent, which is in the Stonehaven community down by the soccer fields on the south end of town. And just so, in case you missed it, again, 417 McCullough Crescent. Thanks.
Councillor Inchberger?
Happy holidays, everybody.
So I'd just like to comment that municipal staff has arranged for a mayor's New Year's Eve levy. It's at the Davidson Center between 2 and 4 on the 31st of December. There is skating, swimming, coloring, crafts, concession booth. Yes. The levy, I looked over the levy and the levy was dry. We need a motion to extend, or we're gonna go home, one or the other.
You can say that. Want to go home? I'm spent tonight. I'll follow the will of council.
Motion to extend for until the close of business. Which is 9.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you second that? Okay, there's a motion on the floor to extend till the end of business. All in favor? If you're all in favor, please put your hand up. Just got defeated. Councillor Blackwell? We have to.
And I'm interested in making a motion to extend, but I'm unsure perhaps how to do it because we have 2 items on our closed agenda. And I'm,
That critical?
One of them is easy.
yeah, I think one. If they're time sensitive, should I extend for 30 minutes? Will that be enough time?
Director Weiser, is the first item time sensitive?
Through you, Mayor, I would say so. So I'd appreciate it if we could deal with it.
So
Yes.
did I hear you say to
Yeah.
deal with the first issue?
Yes, that's exactly what you heard.
Okay, I thought that's what I heard you say. Is there a seconder for that? All in favor of that? Okay, there we go.